Over to Greg. Greg?
Well, welcome everyone. The first agenda item, everyone recalls we bought two tents, one at the middle school and one at Slatington, and they are used as outdoor classrooms. And we did talk about, when we first began our discussions about concerns about setting one up in the dirt or on the grass behind Slatington. So there has become some mud in there in the spring. So one of the ESSER projects that we're looking at is pouring a concrete pad out behind Slatington and putting the tent back on it. Kids would walk out the playground doors, right down the sidewalk, right into the tent, and they'd be able to use it, not get in the mud, wet grass clippings, all that kind of stuff. So it's on there. It's mostly informational at this point. I need to collect 3 quotes to meet the ESSER's guidelines. So I've met with 2 contractors so far, and that's more information as we move through the project. And I received quotes. Are there any questions on that item? The next item, district cooling tower and heating loop maintenance. I've talked about this at a couple of buildings and grounds meetings. This is monthly inspections of our cooling towers, chilled water systems, hot water systems. It would consist of balancing pH and conductivity, nitrate control, corrosion control, in all those loops. The current service agreement ends June 30th of this year. That vendor has not submitted another proposal to me. This is the group that I had talked to you about in the past. They work with Burns Mechanical. And this is the proposal I'm bringing forward to everyone. I'm recommending that we enter into this agreement for 3 years. As it says on the agenda, it's a 3-year service agreement. The first year is $7,000, 2% increase in years 2 and 3. Are there any questions about this proposal?
Come out of your budget?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. This is something I already have budgeted in my budget. The numbers are there. We're just be switching service providers.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the only proposal you got so far?
That's the only one that I have. The other vendor I've asked 4 times for a proposal.
Okay.
I feel very confident in these folks. I've worked with them with Burns Mechanical. They've been here and did some work in the past for us. I feel very confident, so that's the group that I'm recommending. If anyone has any other questions, I'm willing to find some answers.
Does everyone have an issue on the board? Looks like that's a go, Greg.
So this item will be on the agenda for Monday night's approval. The next item, the district, our district walkthroughs that we did with the board members. So I'm just going to review it a little bit, and I think we're able to see it up on the big screen then. So we'll start with the high school there. We did our walkthrough on a Saturday morning, and I'll just go over them very quickly, and if there are any questions, we'll answer them by building. There was some work to do in the locker room with the lockers. That was completed. There was some ceiling tiles that needed replaced. We replaced those. There looked like there was some dirty buildup on the wall behind some of the sinks. We washed that all down. It looks very nice now. And there's a water fountain in there that we did talk about the previous buildings and grounds meeting that we're going to replace. In the wrestling room, there's a a ladder slash monkey bars type piece of equipment on the wall. It's pulling loose from the wall, and after conversations with the athletic director and the wrestling coaches, it was decided that we'll just take it down. Not something they really use that much, and for safety, we're gonna take it down and remove it. The water fountain in there, we're not going to replace since there is a bottle filling drinking station right outside the doors. There's some work to be done after that ladder apparatus is removed, repairing the wall. Some ceiling tiles in the hallway that needed changed out. They were removed and replaced. We talked about some age-appropriate seating in the art room. That's will be addressed in a long-range furniture replacement plan. In the wood shop, there was some ductwork that had duct tape on it. That since has been removed, and we put metal straps on, and I'm going to call it end caps over some of the ducts. Stairwells, the note was made, the steps were dirty and the stair treads, the edges are cracked. There's not a whole lot we can do with those. If we want to look at that project in the future, the floor tile that's in there does contain asbestos, so we would need to have an abatement project to take care of that problem. The exterior, we walked that walkway that leads out to the back field. We talked about power washing that this summer, and that'll be a summer worker project. We have a new dugout roof. The fascia is on there now. That work's completed. In our 5-year long-range maintenance plan, we talked about a baseball, softball complex, which is in the long-range maintenance plan, and there'll be more on that as we go through the budget presentation. Scoreboard, everyone's aware that the softball scoreboard quit working. It's 20+ years old. No parts, a new one is ordered, and as I reported last month, it's expected to be delivered on June 16th. Another note on the softball, baseball complex, there's no concessions there or opportunities for fundraising. We talked about the tennis courts, possible an area for a memorial of some sort, or a storage facility, and the chain link fence that's currently around it is rusty, and that will be addressed in the long-range maintenance plans as well. Are there any questions about the high school punch list? Yes?
What ended up being the solution for the girls softball scoring right now? Remember that conversation?
Yeah, we have
Maybe
a,
Mr. Geis.
manual flip chart
Okay.
that we have that we'll
Thank you, I
follow.
just don't want to forget. Okay, thank you.
Well,
We'll move on to the middle school. My staff did remove the, it was like a pegboard material off the walls. We hung new drywall, we taped back with it, we primed it, and we're looking for ideas, and we are trying to develop a long-range maintenance plan to do something there, be it new bulletin boards, a mural, something like that.
Greg, can you move that up on the screen?
I just did, sir.
Oh, then it just happened.
Classroom tile work. We have 2 classrooms that we plan to replace floor tile in this year. The tile that's in there now currently, the glue's letting loose from the tile, some of them pop up, so we've been each year in-house replacing a floor or 2 of vinyl floor tile. That'll be done in-house, it's out of my budget. Locker room concerns of some changing areas of privacy needed in there. We're working on developing some sort of long-range plan to handle that situation, I guess you would say. The tech guys plan on replacing a bunch of projectors in the classrooms this summer, which we'll work with them, and we replace the mounts, move electrical work, and they hang the projector and program it or focus it in after our work's done. There are about 4 whiteboards that need replaced. Those are the room numbers that I have right now. So just so everyone's aware, we are looking at replacing 4 whiteboards. That will be covered probably out of either Eric's budget or my budget, I'm not sure, but it's not a thousands of dollars to replace those. And we talked about replacing the furniture in the high school and the middle school libraries, since they're, I'm gonna say, transitioning more to a workspace where it's using computers and that kind of work. So that's will be addressed through the long-range maintenance plan as well. The exterior of the building, we talked about the metal aluminum pieces that are on the front. Those are outdated, and maybe down the road we would look at doing something outside to cosmetically enhance the front of the building. Tree management, we talked about that. There are a bunch of sycamore trees in the front that are always shedding bark and leaves. We have sycamore trees along the side over here at field hockey with limbs out over the roof. We talked about doing something with those down the road. The parking lot islands between the middle school and the high school, we talked about those. Possible sidewalks, that is the area where we do dismissal for middle school and high school. So we talked about sidewalks there. That's something we're looking at in the long-range plans. And a new marquee for out on Center Street, the one straight in front of Slayton, or straight in front of the middle school out here. An LED wireless billboard that we could put up any information we need to. So those things were identified during our walkthroughs. Are there any questions about any of those items? Move on to the next page, Slayton Elementary. We had renovations there 2010 to 2012. We didn't really have anything identified that really interior-wise needed to be taken care of. The only other item for there was mulch on the playground. We do mulch every year, but this year it's probably need 2 tractor trailer loads at least of mulch to get it back where we want it. Field house, when we walked through there were some minor maintenance things. I'm not going to go through them, you can read them up there, but you can see we have repaired or replaced all those items there. Out in the stadium, press box windows, we've talked about those a couple of times. They're fogged. They're 2-pane, like insulated glass, and the seal is broken. They fog up between the glass. We talked about needing some sort of long-range plan there. Stadium fence repairs. There are some gates that need realigned. There are some bent posts from a windstorm. AB fence is scheduled to come in on May 9th and make all those repairs, which will be, the funding for that comes out of my regular maintenance budget. Talked about painting the ticket booth. That would be a summer project for the summer student workers. Are there any questions about anything in the stadium field house?
Didn't we talk about the ticket booth changing that whole thing, or what did we decide on that?
We've talked about it several times, but it really never got off the ground
Okay.
to move anywhere.
I just remember us having a discussion on that.
We did.
So,
We did several times. Peters Elementary, there was a stained ceiling tile. We replaced that. The storage area we've heard about several times. We're working on cleaning some of the older stuff out of there that we're never going to use. Most of that goes to recycling, and then the money goes back to the business office. First and second floor drinking fountains, they were still covered from last year. We did open those up. made any repairs we needed to do. They're online and working. And gym partition wall, we talked about that several times. That is on the long-range maintenance plan currently. And we talked about pressure washing the exterior, the back of the building near the memorial garden that's out there. There's some moss and stuff growing up the side of the wall. We talked about power washing that. That'll be a student worker project this summer as well. Any questions about Peters? So I'll probably follow up one more time, one more meeting down the road, finalize everything. If there are any further questions at that time, we could talk through them. The next item, fuel bids. So I reported out on Friday in the Slate about the results of the fuel bid. There was only one item. I don't know, are you able to open up the fuel bid? We're looking at specifically item number 3. That was the only item on there that we use. The bid award at the time, the top number you see, the $3.0942 was the price of the fuel at the time the bid was given. The .0605 is the cost that they charge or add on to the cost of the fuel to deliver it per gallon, and the $3.1547 is the actual delivery price. And if you'll note up in the top, it says vendors will provide the current pricing using the awarded differential. So when we received these bid results, I had to call the vendor, which was Petroleum Traders. They would lock in the price of the fuel at that time. So you'll see that on the agenda, on my agenda, we locked in at $3.1639 per gallon. So at the time I locked in, it was basically 1 cent more than the bid was when it was presented. So when you see the agenda item that it says award to Petroleum Traders for $3.1639, it is different than the bid award that actually came out, because when I locked the price in to the committed gallons, that was the price at the time I locked it in. So it's basically was 1 cent more. So on the agenda, you're going to see an item for Monday evening for everyone's approval. Are there any questions about the fuel bid?
What was the price last year, Greg? Do you know off the top of your head?
$1.9873.
1.9?
Yep, basically $1.99 a gallon.
$1.99, okay.
I rounded it up, but it was $1.9873. I'll follow up the conversation with, since there were so many no bid items, the IU 16 decided to reissue the Keystone Purchasing fuel bid again. So they're rebidding only the no bid items. So we're going to participate again, and hopefully there will be bids which are released June 3rd in time for us to make any adjustments to the budget if we would need to. Hopefully we got some vendors who are willing to bid the no bid items.
Greg, what happens if we don't get bids?
If we don't get bids, we could go out and bid it ourselves. We could also turn to the state contract, a CoStar's vendor, any of those. So there are options. It's just that, we'll explore those options if we don't get any fuel bids. Any questions about the fuel bid?
Does the committee support this going to the board for the heating oil?
Anybody have an issue? I think it's all right.
No, because of the volatility of the market, even though you lock in that bid at 3.1, do they still have the right to change that or no?
No, it's locked in at that price.
But though you do run the risk, as we have had before, where if it goes to $4 or $5 a gallon, they may end up pulling out and saying, we cannot deliver it at that cost. Then we
That
run
has
the
happened
risk.
That has happened before, and we were basically told, too bad.
Yep, too bad, too
We
sad.
can't do it, sue us if you want, but
Yeah.
we're not gonna give it to you for that price. So
Yeah.
Lucky and really did nothing.
Right.
The next agenda item, Mr. Link will talk about.
So, I think most of you are familiar with the McClure Company. They did our entire ESCO energy saving project, which was a two-phase project at all the buildings. They inquired if the board would be interested in hearing about potential savings through a solar energy program. I told them I would take it to the committee to see if you were at least interested in having them come in and hear, how they could install solar panels to generate our own energy, which would eventually have a long-term savings for the district. So I'm looking for feedback from the committee members if they would like to hear a presentation from McClure Company on solar energy.
Can't hurt to at least hear it.
Yeah, that's how I feel too.
I don't see any problem with that.
Okay. I will work with our representative to get them in for a presentation, if not June, sometime in August. Thank you.
All right, for technology, I don't have a lot on the agenda tonight, but the first thing I want to talk about was E-rate funding. We apply for E-rate funding every year, so a few months ago we applied for E-rate funding for the E-rate year 2022, which really starts on July 1st of 2022 and runs till July 1st or June 30th of 2023. So they did approve our funding this year for our Category 1, which is our fiber connections. And we will receive a discount, an E-rate discount of $5,670. That's for our connection from NLSD to the IU for our fiber connection that takes our internet traffic out through the IU. And we received another funding commitment decision letter saying that we will receive $7,948.80 in E-rate discount for our connection from Slatington Elementary to Peters Elementary. So the total E-rate discount that we will receive is $13,618.80 for 2022 E-rate year, which again runs from July 1st, 2022 to June 30th, 2023. And the final step in that process is we have to submit a form, FCC form 486, which is a certification that we meet all the SIPA, that's the Children Internet Protection Act, compliant filters for our internet connection. So we submitted that form last week, and that concludes all of our requirements for E-rate this year. So we will receive that funding. Anybody have any questions on that?
What's E-rate funding?
The E-rate funding, that's federal funding. It's a program run through the FCC. Basically, we receive the numbers that I gave you. There's essentially a 60% discount. So when I say that, we don't actually receive the funds. We get discounted billing. We have those contracts through Penn Teledata, so we get discounted billing. So they discount the bills by 60% in those numbers that I gave you. We also, that's for Category 1, which is our internet connection. We also sometimes use E-rate. If you remember, a few years ago, we did our network project. That was that big project, and it was like a $300,000 project, but we received like over 100. It was 100. I forget exactly what it was off the top of my head, but it was like $120,000, $130,000 back in E-rate funding. So we also, that's called Category 2 when you do like network projects. So in fact, in the next few years, we'll be probably doing another E-rate project at Category 2. So that's what E-rate is.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? Okay, and then the only other thing I have on my agenda for tonight is just wanted to let everybody know that we've been doing the last few weeks PSSA online testing at Slatington Elementary and also the middle school. And all that testing that we do now is done online using the Chromebooks. And just wanted to report that we had no major technical issues during the testing. From our point of view, from the technology perspective, everything ran smoothly. We had a few issues, like with students not typing in their name. They get like a little ticket with numbers on it. Sometimes they type in the wrong number. I believe we had one keyboard where we had a key not working. But we have staff, when we do the testing, we have staff at each school ready to go. We get spare Chromebooks ready ahead of time. So if anybody has any issues, we're there to go right in the room, take care of the problem. We exchange devices rather than, trying to fix a problem. We just give them another device. So just want to let everybody know that testing went well. So anybody have any questions on anything? That's all I have for this evening. Thanks.
Cafeteria report.
Some updates from food service. First of all, this Friday, the 6th, is National School Lunch Hero Day, so I plan on bringing in a nice treat for my staff. And, if you happen to be in the cafeteria and want to say a kind word to the staff, just to appreciate them, that would be great. Last time I had talked about increase in food and paper costs, so I already did talk about that last time, so we're continuing unfortunately with that. It was right around 6% of an increase overall for food costs, and it's projected to hopefully not, but reach like as high as 10%. So we've been taking, all that into consideration when we're planning our menus and so forth for our May and June menus to finish up the year. We're trying to utilize as much product that we have in-house and start tapering off, our ordering for the rest of the year. We did meet as a group, me and 12 other food service directors at Parkland last week when our main grocery bid for 2022-2023 next year's school year. We actually got five distributors respond, and they have been going through the process of, we sat and literally went through 360 some line items of our groceries that we order collectively as a group, and the best price, we go with the best price, which currently the top two are US Foods and Cisco. I know, just was speaking with my staff, I am not familiar with either one of them because we've been, using two other distributors currently, but US Foods has a really good inventory and has been great to work with in the past, so we're kind of swaying towards that company, but we will see. The only thing we're concerned about with that is some of the items, if it's not like a house brand item, they're putting little phrases under their pricing, pending price adjustments per manufacturer type things in there, so we definitely took notice to that. So we are meeting again this Friday morning to finalize things, and we have a week to decide as a group, who we will give the bid to. In terms of summer feeding, I have not applied yet because it's actually, the application is not open yet. I've been calling weekly about this, speaking with somebody by the name of Sherry Baker from the PA Department of Ed, Food and Nutrition Department, and apparently they're waiting on USDA for further guidance about any changes to the program that are anticipated, transitioning from the waivers that we were under the last 2 years to now. And as I mentioned before, to be eligible to run the SSO feeding program over the summer to feed students at the camps and also, open to the public, we have to hit that 50% or higher for free and reduced. And I was working with Todd Briner because we were hoping to use Slatington Elementary to operate out of, and they aren't quite at that 50%. However, news literally this morning that she told me was for this summer and this summer only, they are, let me look at my notes here, it's called, they're allowing schools to become eligible in a different way. And it's actually a formula. Let me see what it's called here again. Again, I just found this out today. But basically, it's called the Identified Student Percentage. It's a formula that takes the number of students who are direct cert, whether it's through Medicaid, SNAP, TANF, and you divide that by your enrollment for each of the schools. So I did this formula for all of our schools, and actually all 4 schools hit above that 50% going this route. So at this point, we are eligible. We don't have to find those 11 students that I was talking about before to get them direct certified. So all 4 schools technically are eligible. The other news I actually found out just earlier today was we can no longer do grab and go style, which is kind of huge, like logistically. That was just okayed last year because of COVID, but traditionally a regular summer feeding program that's considered an open site, you are open to the public. They actually have to eat their meals on site, whether that's indoor or outside, you know, at a picnic table, under a tent, or however that may be. They cannot take their meal with them. So we will still be serving in like a takeout container, but we wouldn't be bagging everything up and having them drive through and get all their meals and go. So every day we have to be open for them to sit and eat on site.
What if they
is
take
what
it
she's
with
saying.
them? What if they just take it with them?
If somebody comes to like audit and sees that, it's not, you know.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, so that's the update on that. And then I did get an email back in March. We had to apply for the USDA. There was a supply chain assistance funds available to all school districts who applied and sent in the application for it. And the total allocated funds for our school district specifically that they're anticipating for us to receive May 13th is $34,736.57. And again, that's for the supply chain assistance funds, you know, coming off COVID and just with supply chain issues that school districts have been having. That's what that funding is intended for. And there's specific ways that we are supposed to be spending that money. So minimally processed food, they actually provide me with a log. I have to track everything of how I'm spending that and until it's fully depleted. So, and you don't have to use it within a certain period of time. You know, it's not like it just has to be used within next school year. It could be, you know, over 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, school years. Yeah, and then just like overall our participation has been holding its own for both breakfast and lunch, especially breakfast. We noticed an increase. For example, at the high school, they range anywhere from serving 80 to 90 students for breakfast in the morning, and it's been as high as 130. So we are having a good turnout with our with both, but breakfast we've noticed an increase there. We just started opening up registers for only like a la carte items at this point at elementary and Slatington to offer, you know, snack bags, ice creams, cookies, little things like that, which the children have enjoyed and has, you know, helped with our overall sales. So that's kind of my update in a nutshell. So,
A lot of hot off the press.
a lot of stuff, like, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
come back to the not the grab and go anymore.
Yeah.
How are we gonna monitor, or how are we gonna handle if people do take it and leave? I mean, is there any way to, you know, I mean, first of all, they're gonna be told they're not allowed to do that, am I
Yeah.
correct?
No, they're
Yeah.
just, they're gonna do it.
But-
I talked to the food service director at Allentown School District today, who's been doing summer feeding for a long time, like prior to COVID and also during COVID. They do have staff there that are monitoring, you know, while they're eating wherever, you know, whether that kind of like we have cafeteria monitors, so to speak, and they're helping with like meal counts too. she said, I'll be honest with you, we had the best turnout with our grab and go meals that were open to the community when it was truly grab and go, where you just came once a week to pick up all 5 meals at a shot and go. The day-to-day coming to eat during a period, you have to serve them between a period of time that you publish. So say we only are open 12 to 1 every day. They have to come during those times to be, counted in the meal counts when we submit for reimbursement. And yeah, they said their turnout prior to COVID for the community members, not the students that are there for camps, actually hasn't been the greatest turnout, but it did increase when it was grab and go style. So I don't really know what our turnout's gonna be, if there's gonna be that many people to come, because that would be them coming every day during that specific time and having to stay there and eat. So I don't know.
So, we will communicate, we will set expectations. We are not staffed to monitor that, and I do not plan on recommending to request staff to monitor that.
Can we give feedback to whoever put the rule in place? Say, would they consider going back? I don't know who made that rule.
So, that all comes ultimately because it's being funneled down through federal dollars from USDA to the Department of Ed down to the local districts. It's actually federal regulations, and Mr. Hill and I sat in a federal kind of information sharing session this morning, and there's proposed legislation out right now to try to extend it through this year so we can do it how we were doing it with the grab and goes, but then also to be able to do that through the next academic year. So that still could happen, but right now Pennsylvania is going the route that Mrs. Fink just described.
That also is gonna be economically a lot more than picking up once a week, picking up every day, having staff, at least there to serve it.
Yes. So I do think we should participate, but where, we just kind of set the expectation that we'd like you to eat it in our building or on our campus. We'll have to figure out a system for that. I'm saying right now, I'm not gonna expect our staff to police that.
And it's a daily thing, it's not,
Yeah,
come
for
and
sure.
then it's for the whole week.
Yeah.
But the price of fuel, people are gonna say it's not worth it.
Yeah.
I mean,
We just don't have the resources to try to
Crazy.
mandate.
That's absolutely crazy, you're right, Bob.
it's,
If you could, you threw a lot of numbers around it, if you could just, put it in a pot, stir it around, where does our cafeteria stand now? Are we in the black, in the red, breaking even? Do you have any feeling? Are you gonna need money from us next year to balance your budget, or are you gonna have millions left over to give us, or?
Well, the latter one, no.
Shucks, Matt.
I can be optimistic, okay.
Well, this is the thing, cause and maybe Sherry could speak to this, but we're the report that I print out is like a month behind essentially, and I just closed and put our numbers in for April for reimbursement for our subsidy.
Right.
So that, what you see on this report doesn't factor in that and what's coming, everything, I just put April's numbers in, but we don't see that till the end of May.
Right.
If you know, so, I mean,
Yeah, so she won't get the revenue for that until May.
But we're breaking even at least.
Yeah, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
she's not operating at this point in time where we're gonna owe her money at the end of the year.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good job.
Mrs. Fink, could you, all your notes, email that to me? and
Yeah.
put it in
Yeah.
the minutes? Thank you.
Thank you. Sherry, is this you, the
Yep.
PFM?
Will be kicking off that?
Sure. So this evening, we invited Brad Rennick and Scott Kramer from PFM, our financial advisors, to come and give a presentation tonight on some possible options if the board were to elect to restructure long-term debt. As well as part of that is we have a lot of long-term facilities projects, capital improvement projects, which you'll see later in our budget presentation, And it could also be a way to finance some of those while also restructuring our current debt, potentially with the hope of relieving some of the amounts we're looking to pull out of fund balance and to bring that 4.6% max property tax increase down. So that being said, I will turn it over to Mr. Remick to kind of lead us through that, and if you could just give Mr. Hawes a minute to bring up the presentation.
Great. Well, while he's doing that, it's good to see everyone again. A lot of Zoom meetings over the last couple of years, so it's good to see faces again, not on a screen. So Matt and Sherry reached out and asked us to put some illustrations together to Scott and I to put some illustrations together to talk about just what was mentioned about restructuring some debt. I'll bring back, I don't know if folks remember a couple of years ago, there was a restructuring done to get some immediate relief in the budget, but the debt service is coming back now. So we wanted to take a little bit of a different approach to this as we looked at this in 2022. The first page behind my cover page there is an interest rate chart, which you'll see with a lot of colors on it. Probably many of you are hearing that interest rates are going up, are rising, inflation is real, supply chain issues, we have things going on, as you know, when the other side of the Atlantic Ocean that are been troubling to the markets. Today the Federal Reserve met and they raised rates 0.5%, which was what we expected. In fact, we saw there was actually positive reaction in the markets because there was some discussion about maybe not needing as much as maybe what folks were forecasting. So it actually turned out to be some pretty good news for all of us, at least for today, for this afternoon. We'll see where it goes. But you can see on that chart in the bottom there that there's a box. You can see rates are in fact going up. But also, we like to not lose sight of the fact that that chart that you're seeing on the bottom there goes back to 1993, almost 30 years. And if you look at history, rates today are still relatively low if you look at a historical perspective. So while we're all focused and thinking about what's happened for the last couple months, if you look at what the market is compared to history, rates are still very relatively low. So looking at a debt restructuring like you are, maybe some financing some projects, the market from a historical perspective is still attractive. The next page that we wanted to pull up was to give you an idea of what your existing debt looks like as we currently stand. So there you go, that's perfect. There's a top half of this page and there's a bottom half of this page. The top half is labeled debt service requirements, and that's the principal and interest payments that you have that are currently due on your existing debt. And you have about 4 different issues that you still have outstanding. The 12s, the 18As, I think that was the ESCO project. We have an 18B, which refinanced an old bond in the 2020s. The 2020 is the issue that we did, as I mentioned, 2 years ago to provide you that relief in last year's budget and the current year's budget. When you get to column 6, that adds all those pages of, column 2, 3, 4, and 5 together to give you an idea of what your payments are. And you can see as you go into next year's budget, we return to the debt service levels before the restructuring that was done in 2020. So that's what's coming back there. That's the reason for the increase. We got the relief for those 2 years, and now it's coming back. The bottom half of the page shows you what we call your local effort or net debt service. For some of the projects that these old bonds were financed, you qualified for what's called PlanCon. That's state subsidies to help offset the cost of the debt. That was not available on your 2018 ESCO project. That program is really kind of in, what's the right word? They're not funding new projects, I'll just call it. So it's not like that anything was wrong in 2018, it's just that's not funded anymore, PlanCon. So you'll notice in column 12 there, those numbers are a little bit lower because of the subsidy. So that's the net debt service in column 12 that you're looking at. The debt goes out, if you look at it in aggregate, about till 2030. That's when the bonds are paid off. If you look at the bottom of column 12, and I'll get to this, it's important for a reason, but you'll notice the total net debt service is $23,212,000. Again, that counts principal and interest.
Do you want questions as we go through? You want to save them to the end, or?
I'm fine with whatever.
Okay, so if I'm reading this correctly, and I'm looking at line 6 and line 12, 2023, the total debt service is 3,226,000, and the local effort is 2,009,000, correct?
Correct.
So the state, who keeps telling us they're doing all this stuff to help us, out of that $3 million debt is paying what, 2.9, $300,000, and the rest is all local effort.
Correct.
All local effort,
That's
and I want people to understand that the state keeps saying they're giving us all this money, all this money, all this money, and when it comes down to it, there's a perfect example, they aren't giving us crap. Excuse my language.
That's a fair
but anyway.
observation.
Okay, I'm done.
So no problem. So that's where we stand as of today, the district stands. So we put together a couple of illustrations. I'll try and step through them thoroughly, but there's a lot of numbers, and we try and do these on one page. And we put together a scenario, and I'll try and hit the highlights here, of what a debt restructuring might look like. So we have the far left column, the black column. If you remember what I mentioned before, that's your current existing net debt service, the 23,212. That's where we are today. Okay? What we proposed, or illustrated, I should say, is in the blue, restructure a portion of your 2018A and 2020 debt. And I note something there that it would need to be done on what we call a taxable basis. Because under federal tax law, if you refinance a bond, a municipal bond, before it's callable, you have to do it on a taxable basis. And I just think it's important for us to let you know that. Now, the other portion is the Series B, that's column number 9. That could be qualified as a tax-exempt refinancing because we're at the call date for the 2012 bonds.
The call dates are on
Yep.
this page, right, at the bottom of
Correct.
the.
I'm sorry, I should have pointed that out.
Okay.
The very bottom of that prior page does list the call dates of the bonds, and it also lists what the bonds were done, used for, basically.
Thank you.
Okay? So what's happening is you're refinancing and restructuring. That is, you are trying to create ongoing savings in the budget and extending the life of the bonds. Okay? There's a couple things that are important to note here that we would have to do if the board's interested in looking at something like this. Is we have to, number one, check with your bond attorney to make sure that you can do all this. Okay? It complies with state law and useful lives of projects finance. So we would have to do that. And the other thing too is what these illustrations are, we're assuming basically current interest rates. These aren't locked interest rates at this time. This is just the illustration. So that would be forthcoming if you wanted to look at something like this. Okay, so we don't have a commitment from a lender or a bank at this point. So what happens here is if after we restructure and refinance some of these bonds, and in the blue what we've assumed is you do this step here this fall. Okay, and this is where you get into the refinancing. This is a two-step illustration, some restructuring this year, and then something in 2023. We'll get there in a second. So then what happens is if you look at column 7, the existing local effort that I mentioned before, by doing the blue, you now get to, I'll call it the orange column. Okay? So the debt service in this current budget doesn't change. But next year, instead of being $2.9 million, it goes to $2.3 million, almost a little over $500,000 worth of relief. You will also notice that relief continues on, okay? Because in 2024, if you go back to that block column, it's 2.9. We've now created savings of about $600,000 that continues on. You won't have the jump in debt service like we are experiencing for next year's budget. So it creates more ongoing relief. What we put in the yellow column also for an illustration was if you're doing all of this at the same time, what would happen if you needed $2 million for capital projects? To borrow new money of $2 million. So then what would happen is if the refinancing or the restructuring is in the orange column, you then have to add in the yellow column because that's new debt. So then you get to the green column when you're all said and done. So that's the refinancing, the restructuring, and new money. And what happens then is if you decide to add the new money to this package or to this illustration, you're now in the green column. So we're now at 2.4 or so million dollars as the run rate. And then you can see out in 2031 through 34, we dropped to about $2 million a year, where you otherwise would have had no debt, to be quite, honest with you, right? We would have had the debt gone, but because we're restructuring and adding new money, your debt would go out 4 years longer. So that's kind of what this is supposed to illustrate for you. What we did want to mention in the red column, as we get into column 5, we're moving to the right, that's a 2023 potential transaction, because what we've done with the restructuring is only restructure what we needed to restructure. We didn't want to do any more than we needed to, just do what we need. And what that means is that part of that 2018 A bond, we didn't refinance it now, because we can refinance it later, tax exempt. So we would just do what we needed, and then that red refinancing is not extending or restructuring debt. It's just replacing higher rates with lower rates. And it doesn't look like there's a huge amount of savings, but savings are savings. In column 15, you can see you could save another $50,000 or $60,000 at that time, assuming we don't really know what rates are going to be. But I just wanted to make sure that we didn't lose sight of that, and you'll see why I mention that as I get to one of the future scenarios. So with that.
So Brett, can I just point one thing
Yep.
out? So looking at this one, just so I'm understanding it, so column 7 to column 11, from 23 to 28, we would be leaving around $600,000 each year. But then when we get to 29 and 30, we're pretty much only relieving like less than $100,000 in those 2 years.
Right.
So that year, we're not relieving as much as all of the other ones are. Okay.
We're trying to make it more predictable for you,
Yep.
for the next, whatever that is, through 2030. It's kind
Yep.
of like if you,
Got it. Mhm.
right? And then we just have to go out a little bit further.
Yep, thank you.
For those of you, I'm a numbers person, but people that like graphs, there's on the bottom of this page, it tries to graphically show what's happening for that. The red line, the red dotted line is where your debt currently is, and then we kind of layer in where you would be if you like bars. It's just another way of looking at it. Some people find it easier to relate to graphs as well. So that's a two-step process. That gets you, depending on whether you add the yellow or not, it gets you some ongoing relief. It does obviously stretch your debt out a little bit. When you stretch your debt out, you're going to pay more interest, obviously. So that's kind of all what's going on there. What we did do here on the next page, a lot of the information is similar, so I don't have to necessarily go through as much. But we did have to do a couple things. That is, we had to add, the goal here, was to create more relief than that $500,000 or $600,000, depending on whether you add the new money. And in order to create more relief, you have to refinance more of the bonds. And then your bonds have to go out a little bit longer. So the goal here was, again, column 7, your existing net payments. The blue section is refinancing a little bit more of the 2018 A's. And we have to get a little bit on the 2018 B's, just a smidge there. So we have to get out a little bit more so that when we get to the orange column, we're not at, I don't know if you remember before, it had like 2.3 million. We're now at 1.9 million. So it gets you almost $1 million of relief ongoing instead of the 600 grand. But then obviously to do that, we have to go out to 2036. Before, I think we're in 2033 or 34. So we have to go out a little bit longer. We did also want to illustrate for the board, again, we kept the column yellow, the yellow column basically the same. We had to take it out an extra year to wrap around the restructured debt. But if you added the new $2 million of new money, you now get to the green column. So what happens there, now again, you go out further. I think it's 3 years further than the green column on the prior page. But you get your debt service closer to 2 million as opposed to 2.4. Gets you that additional relief. Obviously, the more you restructure, the further you go out, the more interest you pay. We did want to kind of keep the red in there as well. Although we're refunding more of the 2018 A's in this scenario, there would still be a component of that issue that is not refinanced. And if we got to 2023, you could refinance and maybe pick up the savings. The savings aren't as great as the prior scenario, again, because we refunded it more with the restructuring. So we wanted to kind of keep it in there, just to kind of keep in your mind that this could be a two-step process. But that's what this is trying to illustrate, is getting you a little bit more relief, but we do have to go out a little bit further.
When I compare the two column 16s and I see net overall local effort, I'm seeing the second number down there, it's 833, then it's 2,000,004. Oh, it's 2,004, my
Yeah,
bust,
sorry,
I read it
no
wrong.
problem.
Yeah, I thought it was the same number, I was gonna say, what good is that? Yeah, but it's my bust, I read it
No
wrong.
problem, no problem.
Yeah.
So that's where we are for those two illustrations. It's just a matter of how much relief you might be interested in, getting. Now, the second scenario we ran, scenario 2, was what happens if we just don't do anything this year and just do everything in 2023? Okay. The reason I mention that, because if you do it in 2023. Okay, the 2018 A bond that I mentioned becomes callable. So you could do it on a tax, advantage basis, tax-free basis, tax-exempt basis. So that's what would happen. Obviously, if you wait till 2023, two things really happen. Number one is you don't get relief for next year's budget. Okay, so you wouldn't see anything for next year, and I'll get to the numbers in a second. And the second is you have interest rate risk, because you can't lock the rate for a year. Okay, so what we did here, there is a very tiny, in the blue, there's a lot less color this time, because we're doing it as a one-step process in a year from now. In the blue, there is a small piece that needs to be non-taxable, but it's a lot less than what there was the prior scenarios. The second column, the second blue column, is the restructuring, but it's done on a tax advantage basis, okay? And then what happens if we kind of go over to the keep the same methodology. If you get to column 10, that's the orange, we're back to where we were from the prior scenarios. However, it's important to note that in next year's budget, it doesn't drop to 2.3, it stays at 2.9, to what you currently are facing. Because we're doing it a year later, budget's passed. What you do see, if you wait a little bit, is in the out years 2031 through 33, those numbers were higher on the prior scenario, so they're a little bit lower in this scenario. Because you don't have to restructure as much, you don't have to do as much taxable. But this page makes a huge assumption, and that assumption is rates are the same in a year from now that they're not, Okay, so that's a huge assumption here. So while you might say, oh, this looks like it costs less, well, I don't know what the rates are going to be in a year from now. So that's kind of that scenario. We did also layer in the yellow, which is the new money, to get you about $2 million. And then there's no red because we're waiting to do all the 18As at once. There's no red in this side because we're doing it all now. And your result in column 12 is about what you saw from the earlier scenario. It's just there's a little bit less of a drop in 31. Okay, and you really don't see anything next year's budget. So we wanted to see what would happen if we waited. And then the final illustration really is what I mentioned before. Instead of getting that relief down to 2.4 or so million that we had before, 2.3, this is to get the run rate back to the 2 million, like that other scenario that I mentioned to you. Again, we're waiting to 2023. We're not doing anything now. We're not doing anything to affect next budget. We're doing it all later. And we now are, when you get to the right, the green column, we get closer to that $2 million number that was mentioned earlier. Again, 2022, 23, it still stays at 2.9. The debt gets paid off 1 year earlier, it looks like, than that other scenario. Where we got the closer to 2 million of relief, run rate, I should say, $1 million of relief. But that's kind of the illustrations there. We wanted to show you now. We wanted to show you what happens if you wait. We wanted to show you if you wait that you don't get any relief in next year's budget. And we also wanted to show you the effect of the new money and the effect of getting more relief versus less relief for your annual ongoing budget. So I know that was a lot. Did I miss anything, Scott, that you thought we should highlight?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is
existing debt profile of the district is very short, so that allows you a great deal of flexibility to do the things that we're talking about. So I would say, kudos to the folks in this room for sitting here with an existing debt profile that does favor your ability to do the things you want to do in these scenarios that Brad has gone through. So even at the end, depending on what you may choose to do, if I were in your seat and saying, well, geez, if we borrow $2 million and we restructure our debt and I'm left with a debt profile that goes out to 2036, that relative to your peers is still a relatively short debt profile that will not back you into any corners to do the things you might want to do down the road. If something else pops up 3, 4, 5 years, your debt profile will allow you to do those things. You're going to have that flexibility going forward, regardless of which of these scenarios you entertain. So, just a sidebar. Yeah, good point.
Again, this is a lot of information, a lot of numbers, things like that. Happy to answer any questions. Sure.
Can you explain why the principal amounts in the top Series A and Series box number 1 fluctuate through each scenario?
Is there a scenario you'd like me to focus on? Okay, or just in general?
Just in general.
Okay, so in the first scenario, I don't know if we want to go back to that. Scenario 1A is going to be larger. I think right now, if you look at the total package of scenario 1 in the green, it's about I'll call it $7,465,000. You see that number there? Principal?
In scenario 1A?
1, excuse me. Scenario 1, on my apologies.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, so that's in the green. And then in the red, it's $7,670,000. That will be the straight refinancing. So we'll just use a number of $15 million or so, if it's okay. That would be the total debt issue for the restructuring, the new money included, and just the straight refunding. If you go to 1A, which I think is where you were headed with this, the principal amounts for the green are obviously the higher, $11.9 million. It's greater than the whatever we had before, 7.4, because we are refunding and restructuring more of the 2018 A bonds now. Okay, so that's bigger. Now in the green on the right, it's a little bit less because we don't have as much to refinance in the future. You might say, okay, Brad, that was 15 million before, now we're at 17. Why is it up $2 million? And the answer is we have to restructure more of other bonds. So that's kind of why we're not below that between those scenarios.
What are most districts at as far as debt, how far they're extended out?
We have it all over the board. I would say to Scott's point, you currently have your debt all expiring within 10 years. That's very, very rare, very rare. We have some clients that go out 30 years right now too. You can go out 30 years, but it's all over the board. It's all over the board. I have a couple of clients who have 25, 30 years. The debt goes out. The problem that I think a lot of folks have been facing is somewhat similar to yours in that under Act 1, there's only so much you can do, and you have certain dollars that you need to allocate in other places of your budget. So to be able to afford capital projects and things of that nature, it gets a little bit dicier to try and amortize principal more quickly because there's so many other demands on your budget. I would say that probably if you go to, as Scott mentioned, 2036, 2037, I mean, less than half of that short. I mean, less than half of the districts have it that short.
Where does the, and I don't know which direction to look, the 2 million in new money, was that your idea, or where did that come from? Why did we plug in about 2 million?
Sure. So that was a question that Sherry and I asked them to kind of work into the presentation, because we know that in our long-term facilities planning, we had some projects on there. Some of them are over $1 million. We got some some recent information today on some projections for the softball, baseball complex. Yeah, it's more than $2 million. Some of the other big projects on there were the water treatment plant out of Peters, although we did get some great information on that recently, which we'll share in a budget presentation, the next budget presentation. And the chillers at the high school, as well as the gymnasium wall at Peters, the wall that opens and closes. It's approaching life's end. And the last project was the new maintenance building, which we saw in our buildings walkthrough. So we have some big ticket items on our plan that are coming up in the next 5
So
years.
this is the number you suggested?
Yeah. Yep.
And that money has to be spent within what, 2 years of the time?
3 years, you have to when you borrow it, you have to reasonably expect to spend 85% of it within 3 years. So basically, I try and say 3 years is really what you're supposed to do.
How different would the numbers be if we didn't add that 2 million in?
We would stop, you would stop at orange. You wouldn't go to green. And then, you know, we could mess with how orange plays out, but we kind of wanted to show you if you did the 2 million, how you get almost to $1 million of relief and how you get to almost to $500,000. So that's where you would stop.
Which is only a difference of like $34,000 in the next year, if I'm reading that right. Look at the yellow, is that correct? If we don't put the new money in, we're only saving $34,000, 83 then for the rest of it. But,
Yeah, you pick paying all that back in the last 2 years.
yeah.
And I guess the thought was, and you know, this is obviously all your decision, it's not ours, but if you're gonna need new money and you're doing all this, it's probably most cost effective with all the costs and things to do it at the same time, if it makes sense for you.
Mr. Reddick, could you kind of talk us through the timeline to kind of make all this happen for, I know we have plenty of time if we were going to do it for 23-24 budget, but for the 22-23 budget.
Right.
What do you anticipate the timeline to be from, you know, kind of from now until when we have to make a decision to be able to get it in for what could potentially be a June budget, or I'm sorry, July budget? Okay.
So obviously what the board would need to do is kind of pick something, one of these options, what they would like to see. What we would do is then talk to your bond lawyer, your bond counsel, your solicitor, to make sure we explain what the proposed transaction is and get them to review it. We would then have to have them prepare what we call parameters resolution. That's a resolution that's required by the state Local Government Unit Debt Act, state law, that the board would need to have a majority vote to approve, which would set forth the parameters by which this could happen, maximum amounts, maximum how far the term is, and things of that nature. So that would need to be acted on in a public meeting. During that period of time, if we had a good idea of what you're doing, we would be working with Sherry and staff to prepare what we call an official statement, which is an offering document, or a prospectus if you've ever bought a mutual fund, to be able to share with bondholders, so they have information on the school district and things of that nature. We'd work with you on that. We would have to file for a credit rating, and once that's filed, it takes 3 weeks to get that back. Okay? And then the other thing is we need to file with the state to get approval. So probably the fastest something like this could happen would be in June. But you know, if in June you wanted to do something, you get the parameters resolution in place, and then we could probably get it done over the summer. The one thing, just to be direct with you, is I don't think we would have it done and closed before next year's budget. We would have to make some assumption that we work with Sherry on what we think this would be, and you know, have a conservative number in the budget. But because we have some flexibility on a restructuring, I think we could nail down a pretty good number for you, depending on what it is that you need to do.
Are the your restructuring costs, fees, et cetera, they're all included?
Everything's in there, yeah.
Okay.
Everything that you need to do with the transaction.
And the red herring that we get from the attorney that they charge us $50,000 for, that's in here too?
Yep, we've tried to bake everything in. I try and get it on one page as best I can. I know there's a lot of numbers up there, but if there's all kinds of spreadsheets, it's confusing enough to have 4 options, but try to put it on one page.
Excuse me, are you guys suggesting one over another?
Well, I think if you were to move for next year's budget, you can have a pretty good idea what the rates are gonna be. If you wait till 23, 24, I don't, none of us have a crystal ball. So that's, I guess that's the gamble.
I didn't know which one you would ask the board to consider.
My only recommendation would be move sooner rather than later.
Sure.
So that would be 1 or 1A, right? That's moving sooner is the 1 or 1A.
Yep.
And I guess the decision is just how much relief.
How far you wanna, right?
What's in fund balance now?
12.6. I figure we're gonna end the end of the year around 12.6. Right now, we're at 12.1, I think.
Is there an easy way, if, say we decided we want to borrow 3 million instead of 2, is there an easy way to work that in there, just multiply by 1.5, and is that too easy?
No. So if you, for example, I'll just go to scenario number 1, if that's okay. If you were to look at the yellow column, we've got $2 million for you there.
Right.
And the debt payment next year is $34,000, then it goes to $83,000 the following year. Multiply that by 1.5.
Just multiply by 1.5.
Yep, that's
Okay.
probably good enough. So 34 becomes 50,
Got it.
80 becomes 125.
Okay.
If we decide to move forward with this and it can't be done by June, our budget needs to be done by June, when is the actual payment due on June 2022? Like this 800,000 number, do you know what I'm saying?
Our next bond payment is not due until September 1st.
Okay,
We make bond payments September 1st and March 1st. that we're
Okay.
done. Yeah. And we did the same scenario 2 years ago. It was around this time when Brad and them came. We had closing in August.
okay.
And they gave me a number that I could put in the budget, and that was the budget number that I used that year.
Got it, I remember that.
Yeah, I think we could give you a pretty good figure.
It may be helpful that you see the budget presentation,
I was
and
gonna say.
especially the long-term facilities planning slides again, because again, you can be able to better consider some of the projects that we have on the horizon, as well as there's some updated numbers as far as revenues and expenditures that Sherry was able to work out since last time. So we may want to go on through the budget presentation and then revisit this conversation. Then we can get back to Brad and Scott. Of course, you're more than welcome to stay, but I believe you're catching a flight very early in the morning.
But, yeah, we would be happy if Sherry knows how to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
Any questions that come up,
One more, then I'll shut up, I promise. Supposing we would borrow 3 million instead of 2 and extend the bonds out, is there an easy way to work that out? Or-
Sure. Yep, we can do that. We would just have to, we would massage the orange column to provide for that. So for example, if you said to me, I want $3 million, but I want my payment in the scenario to still be 2.4 million. You just told me it was gonna go up $50,000 or so if I did, then what we would do is we touch more of the blue and, mess with the blue and then it gets us a better orange so we could fit the higher yellow number. It can be done. We would just probably have to go out a little bit further. That's just the fact of it.
There's no easy way that I
Yeah.
can do that, looking at this, though, is there? The other one was easy, 1.5, but.
Well, probably one of the things we could do, now that I look at this a little bit more closely, if you're going to scenario 1,
Okay,
if you're in the green column,
okay.
if you notice in 2031, the debt service drops from about 2.4 million to 2 million.
Yep.
I don't know if you see that.
Yeah.
We probably could layer in some more new money in there, those couple years, and not extend for a large, long period of time. We probably could do that.
and bring them all back up to the 2.4
Yeah,
million.
we probably could do that, right? Bring it back up, you just don't get that drop in
We
2030.
put $1.2 million back in roughly, so that should cover another $1 million.
And I would just I probably could touch, I think Scott, we could probably look at this, but we probably could touch a little bit more of the 18As, you know what I mean, now, so the red gets a little bit lower, touch more of the 18As.
Dry powder and
Yes, I think we could figure that out. You would just level out at 2.4 instead of dropping to 2 million.
And you don't want to go more years because typically the interest rate's gonna be higher the more years you go out, and that's where you're suggesting.
Well, we were just going out as far as we had to go out, okay? To keep it kind of, not go too long, because obviously the longer you go.
There was no magic number there.
No, it was just trying to fit it in and kind of structure it so that we didn't go too far. And keep some of the costs down, because obviously we can pay more interest over time, we want to keep the costs down. But obviously, I mean, this is an illustration, and these are fair questions, and if there's any other illustrations, we'd be happy to provide them.
Brad, if they want to look at, though, the scenario 1A with it going out the longer period of time, that is going to change because there's no huge drop at the end of that except for the final year in 37.
That, I would agree with that.
So that would have to be adding more years if they truly wanted to keep the full $1 million savings
I would
every
agree
year.
with that, yeah. And I think Scott made a really good point. Because you have a favorable debt structure, you have some of these options.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks for your time. I know it's a difficult topic, but hopefully we try to present it well.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
How long is your budget presentation gonna take?
Pardon?
How long's your budget presentation gonna take? 5 hours?
Probably about 15 minutes, I'd say, Matt. 15, 20 minutes, maybe.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Go ahead.
Pardon?
We do that now.
Yep. Move it in the budget.
Lots to think about.
Okay, so we're going to walk you through the budget presentation again. We kind of kept it to hit the highlights from last time and then any new information. And hopefully going through this can maybe help shape your thinking for the presentation that just occurred. So that being said, Steve, if you could advance it, please. And so here are, this has not changed, we're just gonna let this hang up here again. These are the ESSER allotments. And every board meeting, Dr. Stover gives an update on how we're spending that money down through September of 2024. Next slide, please. All right, this has not changed. The only reason why we're leaving it up here again is just an update on the kindergarten enrollment process. As of the end of last week, we were at 125 students somewhere within the kindergarten registration process. We do expect that number to continue to climb, seeing that we're only in the beginning of May. Okay, next slide, please. Here is the projected employee profile. We do want to put in here as a point of clarification, all the numbers are the same as last time, but in the annotation at the bottom there, you'll see that the ESSER funded positions, okay, so everything that we, with the stars, and where there's ESSER people included, some support staff, some professional staff, and some administrative staff. This also includes an additional elementary special education teacher that would not be funded through ESSER. However, the elementary classroom teacher, we're now recommending an extra kindergarten teacher, so we go from 6 kindergarten teachers to 7. If we stay at 6, right now at 125 children, that would be 20 to 21 students per class in the kindergarten classroom. I'm recommending to you that that's high for one teacher, some aides spread out amongst all the classrooms, and 20 children first time coming into a school setting. We can get that down a little bit by adding an additional teacher. That would drop it down to about 17, 18 students. We are now recommending that the funding for that kindergarten teacher come from ESSER, but what we do is there's currently 2 TIS teachers. One of those positions, money for one of those positions goes to fund a kindergarten teacher for at least the next 2 years. And we have to make the decision to go down to 1 TIS in the district. So it would be a new kindergarten teacher and 1 TIS. Then we monitor that kindergarten position over the next 2 years to see if we can fold it into the general fund through attrition.
How can we use ESSER funds for that, if it's a new position? I mean, compared to regular budget, so why can we use ESSER funds for that new teacher position?
Well, it's just like adding the TIS.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an allowable cost under ESSER. Or just instead of for position A, it would be dedicated to position B. Yep. Continuing to recommend an additional .5 middle school position. That would be to expand the scope of our current halftime FCS teacher to take on some of the career and school-wide positive behavior support functions in the middle school. That position would be part of the general operating budget, not ESSER's. We're also recommending that we take our current school police officer and make him our second school police officer and make him part of the administrative support staff agreement. Currently that position has been funded through grants. We will continue to look to try to fund that position through grants, but we're recommending that if we can't fund it through grants, we're allowed to use whatever we need to cover it out of the general operating fund. That position is extremely helpful to the safety and security of the students and staff and visitors in our district. So, you know, we're comfortable with a police force of 2 right now. By no means are we recommending that that goes down to 1.
So the funding runs through this current school year that we have for that grant, right? And then
Yeah.
after that it ends, and we have to get another grant.
Agree with that? Yes.
Correct. We have Title IV monies that we currently use for that. As long as we stay under 30,000, we're able to allocate more of those for safety and security.
Okay.
So that should continue into the fall, but we don't have that position fully funded for that.
Okay.
Next slide, please.
So this again is a slide that we showed last year. This is where last month. This is where in prior years where expenditures and our revenues have fallen. Red being our expenditures, green being our revenues. Every year for the past from 2017 to 2020, our expenditures have exceeded our revenues. The 2021 school year, again, that was the first full year of COVID where we were not operating at full capacity in all of our districts, so that's why there is a huge increase in the revenues versus the expenditures, and we came out and realized about $2.4 million in fund balance, which we did put in as earmarked specifically for debt service payment because we knew those debt service payments were coming back, so they were earmarked in fund balance to be used in that capacity. And this year, I'm figuring we're probably going to end up about $600,000 to $700,000 to the good. So, and again, I say that tongue in cheek because if you have one special ed student move in, and even if they move in tomorrow, that can throw this. I mean, we could end up spending a lot of money on that special ed student just that short period of time, or outplace of a student. You know, somebody who's having some kind of issues and would need to be outplaced for the same reason. It's all a cost that at this point in time I can't predict. So it's those unpredictable liars out there.
How did you get to that number? I'm looking at your revenue expenses and I'm seeing 33.4 and 33.8. And what number did you come up with?
I'm sorry, it should be between 4 and 5. What did I say, 6 and 7? Yeah, 4 and 5.
Okay.
Between $400 to $500,000 is what we're gonna realize in revenues.
472 on that, but yeah,
Yeah,
whatever, okay.
yeah. Go ahead, Stephen. And this is just where fund balance has gone over the past couple of years. So it started out in 2016. We took the dip there in 2017, 18, 19, and 20, and then the 20 to 21 is where that huge increase was when we did the, the increase in revenues due to school not functioning at full capacity. And this year, where I think we're going to end up at it. That's Stephen.
Okay, so again, I'm just gonna kind of let these linger up here for a minute. That's the recommended actions from Peters Elementary School. Okay, that has not changed. You can see that we continue to trend towards needing that extra kindergarten teacher. Yes?
How often does library class occur for each grade?
Mr. Schneiderite or Mr. Briner, what's the elementary kind of frequency for your library class?
Once every 6 days, instructional days, not
Yeah.
days of the week, approximately 30 times per year. Same, same goal.
How often has that been affected recently by having to pull those special teachers to take sub spots?
At my building, it's never impacted by that. However, when there's a need for a substitute, those are often the classes that don't get filled. So I don't think even one time I've pulled an encore teacher, music, library, etc., except for Mrs. Bernard, who was there all day. There has been that occur, but not for library classes. If I had to take a guess, my guess is out of the 30 classes, the teachers get sick, have personal days, etc. They miss those classes.
Sure.
I'd say probably out of the 30 days, probably 25 per year, just averaging out. That they actually have class. Sorry.
Yeah. Thanks.
That's consistent with Slayton. He answers all my questions for me.
I'll let you know.
Okay, next slide, please. Again, this is unchanged from last time for Slatington Elementary School. Okay, next slide, please. And no changes for middle school since last time we presented. Next slide. And again, no changes for the high school since last time we met. Next slide.
So this is just some cross drivers for this coming school year. So you're going to see that salaries has dropped because we did pull that TIS position out. So originally in the budget I presented last time, we had an additional kindergarten teacher, and we also had that TIS position in there. So now we were able to pull that quote unquote kindergarten teacher out because the kindergarten teacher is now that TIS position. So that's why you're seeing a decrease. It's less salaries has gone up this year because of that. Retirement the same way, that has shrunk a little bit because the retirement, medical, and everything, and pulling out that one teaching position all makes these numbers slightly less. LCTI number, that has not changed. Again, we talked about the charter school and outplacement potential increases. Again, that's an outlier out there that we cannot count on. Electric, we did still keep that $40,000 deduct in there. And our unknown right now is that diesel fuel and unleaded fuel bidding. As Matt asked the question earlier, we budgeted for 60,000 gallons worth of heating oil. To exactly what Greg had, that's exactly what I have in the budget. So if in prior years, when it was coming in at $2 a gallon, we had a nice little bit of cushion there. If we have a really cold winter, we can get another load. It's to the bone right now. It's what we have always budgeted there, but because it's $3 a gallon, it's using up everything. So we don't know where diesel and unleaded is gonna go. And that could mean that depending upon where those fuel bids come, we may need to put some money in the budget to cover some fuel costs in June. We won't know that till those bids are open in June.
Sherry, I would question that electric cost up there. I don't know if anybody saw in the morning call today, there was an article that PP&L is going to be raising prices like 35 or 38% or something like that. Has that been taken into account? Or it would seem that would pretty much eat up that 40,000
Yeah,
savings.
we don't have to worry about it because we are currently in a consortium bid that we have with Provident Energy, and they bid out for 3 years. So we are locked in with our rates for 3 years, and they go out until June of 23. So actually, they were just recently going to go out and bid to see what the market looked like for us to go out and extend that long to 2024, 25, or 26. So currently, right now, we're okay because of that very scenario that we are locked into an agreement with what our electricity cost is going to be. Good, Stephen, go ahead.
Okay, so this is our charter school yearly cost, broken out by millions. And you'll see that overall, between brick and mortar between regular education and students with special needs enrolled in either brick and mortar charter or cyber charter, we're paying this year 1.68 million. Just as a reminder, for one of our resident students that does not have an IEP to go to a charter school or a cyber charter school, it's $12,842. For one of our students with special needs, no matter what type of special needs they may have, it could simply be a speech impediment, or it could be multiple disabilities. It doesn't matter. If they enroll in a charter or cyber charter school, we're paying a little over $30,000 per student. So I implore you to talk to your legislators about this. It's not a charter school issue, it's how they're funded.
It's a funding issue.
If we could at least get them to be funded at the same level as we're being funded, it would, I'm not gonna say eliminate our debt, but darn close to it. Okay, next slide, please.
So again, we budgeted for our real estate tax collection rate at 93.75%. I originally did a projection as the max of what we could raise the Act 1 index to is 4.6%. Last month, if you remember, I said that 4.6% would give us $813,000 in additional revenues. We just received the notice that the gambling money that we are going to get this year increased by $247,000. So that's going to call money that's going to come in. So that decreases the amount of money that we can tax now. Because that money, we can no longer tax that money because we get that from the state off the top. So that decreases our amount that we can get for Act 1 index. So the 4.6% will give us $630,000 worth of revenues now. Federal revenues are budgeted at the 21-22 rates, and they pretty much stay flat funded every year from the federal side of things. State revenues, again, we budgeted at the 21-22 rate, but there's that basic ed funding and that special ed funding increases. Those are the dollar amounts that were in the governor's budget. At this point in time, there is little talk and little discussion on what's happening. Like, we're not hearing anything at the state level from where this is going at this point. Budget talks have been very minimal. Hoping to get more information before our June budget so that if we hear anything, we can increase those revenue expenditures as well.
Sherry, explain that 630, you said we lost 200,000?
No, yes, so we got 240-some thousand. So originally for the gambling tax money for taxpayer relief, we normally get $950,000 from the federal government directly, or from the state directly into us.
Okay.
They raised that this year. We're getting 1.19 million. Yeah.
So that's good.
Yes, so that's good. So you're gonna see as we go through in slides, our expenditures and our revenues have come closer together now because of that money that we're getting from the state.
I have a question on this too. So it still says 4.6%, but now the 4.6% is like worth less. So does that mean that
Correct.
the Act One is actually not 4.6%?
No, it's still-
really like 3.9%.
No, it's still 4.6, because it's 4.6. So what they do is, I say I need $17 million to balance my budget. Let's just say I need 17 million in tax dollars. I'm getting $1.1 million from the state, so now I only need 16 million. Where last month, I was at 17 million, I only had 900,000, so I needed 16.8 million or 16.2 million, whatever that number is. So then that money then is multiplied by 4.6% to get me the, so I have less money now. I have less money that I can tax now versus prior because I got more money from the state.
But isn't that 4.6% related to the mill rate on a house? So
No,
like,
it's rated to your millage rate. So your millage rate last year was 20, let's just say North Lehigh County, 23.56%, I think it was. You multiply that 23.56 by 4.6%, and then you add the 23 plus what the additional 4.6, and that's how much I can go up. So that can go up, but that then gets multiplied to your assessment.
okay.
So when I do the 2.3% and I multiply it by the 4.6, that stays the same. But now my assessment, because I don't have as much money, that because the state gave me more money, I'm taking that money off the top. So because they gave it to me, so I don't need to collect it from you.
Got
The
it.
state gave it to me.
Thank you. I didn't understand how it filtered back down
Yeah.
to affecting the mill rate. Okay.
Yep. So this is just the June 30, 2021. This is where we ended our fund balance last year, which is 12.1 million. And this is just the categories that where we had all the money positioned. Again, the federal, the future debt service payments there, we had $2.4 million in there as being used for future debt service payments. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, so here we're going to take this slide and the next slide are our long-term project planning and potential use of fund balance or now potentially use of additional monies if you were to do a debt restructuring as presented earlier this evening. This slide has not changed since the last time. Just a quick update on the middle school kitchen project next week. Mrs. Molatoris, Mr. Durr, Dr. Stoker, and I will be meeting with the site superintendent for the project, as well as the contract representatives. And we're going to have the first construction kickoff meeting. I'm sorry, and Mrs. Fink, the main person that needs to be there. My apologies. We're all going to be meeting with them next week to really start scoping out, more of the kind of details of what that work is going to look like in the timelines. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, here you'll see that some things this time are highlighted. The ones in yellow are some of the big ticket items that could be considered for if you were to take out additional money as part of that long-term debt restructuring. I can let you know that the baseball, softball fields, we about 3 o'clock this afternoon got word from the site engineer that gave a proposal back in, I believe, 2018 for the basic level baseball field only work. It's a little over $2 million. Now, as you continue to kind of layer on options, because keep in mind, if we do something to the baseball field and we don't do anything to the softball field, it could become a Title IX issue. It could go all the way up as high as close to $10 million if you were to do a complete complex overhaul.
I don't think so. Sorry.
Matt, you'll donate that, right?
Oh, you want a check or cash?
So, obviously, if we want to try to do if we want to try to do something to that property over there. We're gonna need to continue to work with the site engineers and just start saying, peeling things off. But whatever we do, we gotta keep it equitable between the female sports and the male sports. So just know that. The water treatment plant at Peters, we got some extremely good news early last week. And that's because of how we've been maintaining that water treatment plant over there. And the stuff that typically fails on it is low-cost type stuff, right? PVC piping, the blower pumps, things like that. The actual structure itself, the concrete structure itself, is projected to last for at least another 25 years. So we're recommending to just remove that from this list. Because as the smaller things fail, you know, it's still a lot of money, but it could be $1,000 here, $5,000 there over the years. And that's stuff that we have built into Mr. Durr's budget, just as part of general maintenance operations. So we're recommending we take that off the list. Any questions on any of that?
Will the chillers really need to be replaced, or are we just assuming that they need to be replaced?
I would say right now they're on the watch list. And what I mean by that is we would need to get an expert in to kind of do for us what we just had done for the water treatment plant, and make a stronger recommendation back to us.
We might want to do that.
Okay.
But, oh, that's a gal. That's a small little thing that they use to.
It's like a bobcat.
Bobcat.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know what
The
that
gal.
was either.
Ours is just the manufacturer's a gal.
Yeah.
That's okay, I had to ask too the first time I
Yeah.
heard the word. So I guess my question here is, you know, I know that we've talked about baseball and softball since 2018. Would you like Mr. Geis and myself to just keep going back to the project engineer and saying, you gotta work with us here, and then come back to this group again?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what would it look like broken out in phases? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, what has to happen first, how many, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
Is there a number that you would like us to say that we need to try to back into? Kind of like.
I'll
reverse
give you
engineering.
$10,000,
Zero.
you just go with it, okay?
I'm sorry?
It's gonna be fine, we'll give you 10K, you just go with it.
Just
run with it.
Oh, you go 12
Run with
then?
it.
Okay.
Now, when you talk about renovation of the field, you're talking about drainage?
Everything
And-
from total site work, the stormwater management, the drainage, the actual repositioning the fields, so drainage and that stuff isn't an issue.
Would that include adding retention ponds possibly?
Looks like we can use the one that's currently out there,
Okay.
but it's a lot of the underground work to kind of get everything there.
And then the substructure, the soil, so it drains better, and
Yeah.
then topsoil on top of
Yeah.
that, the seeding.
Right, and then it would also mean new dugouts, because the positions, the
Right.
fields would be repositioned. And then we start talking. Fencing, then we have to start making decisions like natural grass or synthetic turf. A concession stand came up a couple times. You know, what type of money do we wanna put into a concession stand?
Can we play the lottery?
All those type of decisions. Do we want lighting? Do we not want lighting? Do we want, more permanent bleachers or not? Like, all those type of decisions is where we would have to kind of keep going back and forth with the site engineer. So yes, it would be helpful to Mr. Geist and myself if we kind of had a number that the two of us knew we could work within, just to have the conversation.
Well, I guess one way we would do is the high and the low, and then we work from there. But right now, you're not, like, you got over $1 million there, what does that all cover?
I would say take that $1 million off of there. That $1 million wouldn't even get us a complete baseball field.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah. I would say, and I'll look to Mr. Geis, I think it was about 2.2, 2.3 as a starting point, and then just all the way up.
Is that just for baseball?
And that
It
was
does
just a
not
baseball
include
field.
actual
But within
goals?
there, we can do, okay, take out bleachers, we'll just use the portable bleachers that we have, people can sit on the hillside. All right, do we want natural grass or synthetic turf? What do we wanna do with the dugouts? Do we wanna have a concession stand? Do we want lighting? Like all that type of stuff.
And we're saying that's the best place for it, or I guess the only place for it?
I don't know where else we would have that type of acreage where we could put in a softball field, a baseball field, and a practice field for a multi-sport practice field, which is what they currently do now.
Now, do you have an itemized list for what's included in that 2.2?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like what's all included in that?
What's all included in that?
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Because that's like kind of what I'm interested in, like the breakout of a project like that, like excavation, drainage, you know what I mean, like.
Are we ready to do that now, or are we just looking at it?
Just looking at it right now.
Yeah, we're not
Well,
ready
there's
to
gonna
do
be
that
other
now.
costs too.
I don't know how much
You're
I'm
not
gonna
gonna be
build
able to
out
play
on
those
it.
Yeah,
on
I-
those
at this
fields
point in
for
time, I
years.
don't.
If we're not gonna be doing it for another 5 years.
If you could
or
email it to
whatever,
us,
you know,
that would be great.
I can email it to you, just know though that if you're gonna consider this being part of the debt restructuring, we have to decide now, even though the work wouldn't start until the summer of '23. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
It would have
It does.
impact now.
Yeah, I got it.
So is your preference just for me to email it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
at this
fine.
point in time, yeah.
Yeah,
I don't wanna sit here for
Yep.
20 minutes and look at that.
Okay, next slide then.
All right, so our current district expenses and revenues for this coming year. So, again, our expenses have decreased. They're at 37,650 now. And our revenues, now, I did take out the 4.6 tax increase because I knew last time when we presented it, I wanted to show you this time exactly what we're short in the budget so that you see a number and you know where we gotta get to in order to balance the budget. So the local number there does not have a tax increase built into it. The fund balance number that's highlighted in red there, that is the PCERS and medical that we have earmarked for increases from year to year as they go up to pull that out of fund balance so that we know we're pulling out of fund balance. So our budget shortfall right now is $2,049,000, whereas last time, had I showed it the same way without that tax increase in there, you would add $813,000 to that 2.049. So we were actually $2.8 million short. Right now, we're 2.4 if you would add back in that fund balance money that we know we're taking out of fund balance. So we've closed that gap already by like $400,000 in additional revenues that we got word that we're receiving, plus our change in positions and cutting some teaching positions.
Why are you including the fund balance as revenue? I mean, it's coming out of fund balance, it's not coming out of
But
revenue,
you
correct?
coded on the revenue side of things.
For your coding, okay.
Correct.
But in general, it doesn't,
Right,
it's not
it's-
really revenue.
Right, well, it
not a hit
is
to
because
revenue.
I have to show it as we're taking it from fund balance. So in order to balance my expenditures and my revenues in my,
Okay, so that comes,
I have to, but that's in our savings already.
that's right.
She needs to balance, but I don't know why it comes as revenue. You understand what I'm saying?
Because you're taking it from fund balance and putting it in.
Fund balance is revenue, it's our savings. It's our savings account, it's
Yeah, you're
revenue.
putting it in, so you're taking,
Yeah, so I would,
so it's a revenue.
Right,
but
So really you could say like total outside revenue and total like internal revenue.
correct.
We already
You
have
could.
the 369.
The fund balance is already internal revenue that we already have in our possession, correct, exactly.
So the fund balance isn't listed up there, though?
No, that's just the fund balance that is there, is the fund balance that we're using, 369,000 from that 12.1 million that we said to you a couple slides ago that we have in fund balance.
169,000.
Right.
So, yeah, it's coming from one page to the
It's
other.
coming from a different, okay.
Now, is there a certain threshold in the fund balance that we need to maintain or that we like to maintain?
They say that you should have 3 months' worth of operating revenue in your fund balance. So if the budget is $37 million, you want 3 months of that. So 3, 6, 9, 10 million? Well, 3, 9, what, 3.7? 3 times 3 is 9, 10, 11, almost 11 million.
Is this the final slide?
Nope. Next one. Really quickly, that's just in bar graph, the screen that you just saw with where our expenditures are lying. So our salaries are 14.9 million, and then goes through the rest of them. You saw this slide last went, because we cut that position and stuff. Our budget salaries and benefits total 65% of our budget. Again, reoccurring costs. Go ahead, Stephen. This is our this is our revenue account, so this is how we get up to the $35 million in total revenues, local, state. You can see most of our money comes from our local, state, federal, and then a little bit from other and a little bit from fund balance at this point. Go ahead, Stephen. So this is where we're gonna look at the 2022, where we would be ending our fund balance at June 30th of 2022. I'm thinking we'll probably end with about 12.617 million left in fund balance. But that is, in that 12.6 then, if you look at the highlight in the yellow, is 2.49 of that currently being used for this year's balancing of the budget. If you do absolutely no tax increase, I would have to take everything out of fund balance, so we'd be down at 12.6, would end somewhere around 10.1 at the end of next year. Go ahead, Stephen. So again, here's our expenditures. There's our budget shortfall. 2419132 is our actual budget shortfall, but again, that 369 away from that gives you down to that 2,049,000. We do not do any kind of tax increase. We don't do any bond restructuring. We don't do anything. We're looking at taking $2.4 million out of fund balance. We're left with 10.1 in fund balance at the end of the 22-23 school year.
Does the bond payment money live in the fund balance?
Only that 1 year when I put the extra revenue in there, but other than that, no. It's always out of general fund, but when we got that $2 million back and we knew fund balance, we knew the bonds were coming back, we earmarked all of that money to be used for debt service payments.
Okay.
So there is some money in there that we can pull out to make some debt service payments if we would so choose to do that.
Okay.
Okay? Go ahead, Stephen. So again, here's where I land with the 2,049,000. So what are these unknown variables? Are you guys thinking about doing any kind of possible bond restructuring? If you do and you take it out to that 1A, to the furthest amount, he was saying that he could realize it's about $1 million in savings every year. That now puts us at $1,049,000 short next year. If we get any of that basic ed funding, any of that extra special ed funding, let's just say we get 50% of that, wishful thinking, but if we do get 50% of that, that's $500,000. We're $549,000 short in our budget yet. So that's what you can look at for any kind of a tax increase.
And we'll find that out once PA confirms their budget, right?
Once what?
Yes,
the additional
end of
basic
June
ed
or
and
maybe
state fund,
longer.
we won't know until they pass their budget. You are correct, Michelle.
And that's
Yep.
hopeful thinking.
Yes, that's wishful thinking, exactly.
Sure that won't happen before ours is due.
No, probably will not happen before ours. The only plus is if we start to hear some rhetoric, we might be able to turn around and say, okay, they're telling us you can plan on like 30%, let's plan on that. Paswell pretty much has a good pulse on what's going on there. Like they have legislatures that are at there as budget talks are going on, and they kind of know where things are gonna be heading. They've told us in the past, you're not getting anything, or plan on something, but plan on the low side. You know, so they pretty much have a pulse on what's happening out there once all those budget discussions start taking place. Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay, administratively, we're recommending that the board does consider bond refinancing for restructuring of the debt and potential additional money for district projects. Consider a tax increase at some rate and utilization of the fund balance to generate additional revenue. And then we will continue to do our due diligence and looking for grant opportunities for positions such as school police officer and social worker. Also continue to search for expenditure savings such as utilities, transportation, and staffing. Okay, next slide.
So what does our tax increase look like? If we did, again, the 4.6%, we would be looking at $630,000 in additional revenue, but then I've broken it out. So for a taxpayer in Lehigh County with a median assessed value home of $149,000, last year their tax bill was $3,500. If we did a 4.6, their tax bill would go to $3,661, so it's an increase of $150. It goes down from there. So you kind of look at the scribe, 4.25%, their tax bill goes up $138. If you end at 3%, their tax bill is less than $100. It's $94.94. Northampton County, for a median assessed value home at $45,850. Last year their tax bill was just over $3,000. So if we raise to the max this year, you're looking at $165 for them. Take them all the way down to 3%. They're looking at $116 tax bill. Any questions on that?
Yes, I got a question. I'm dumb to this, if I can ask. What about like apartment buildings and stuff? How do they figure what an apartment building would be worth when it comes to that? I know you were saying about the mill and stuff like that. How does that figure in? Can you answer that? I mean, like in other words,
Are you asking me specifically?
what's that?
Are you asking me specifically?
I'm asking anybody. I'm looking.
An apartment building like a farm, a factory, a house, a double house, a two-story, a one-story, they're all
That's an
assessed.
value.
Okay, and the county goes around and they assess every property and they come up with a value of that. So an apartment is assessed the same way as any other building. They take a look at, you know, what it would be
square
worth
footage
on the
and-
open market in 1991 terms or whatever year it is.
So the renter basically ends up absorbing the cost of the rent increase.
Correct.
Yeah.
So he affects the renter then.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Is that that makes sense?
I know you were saying about more kindergartners now this year coming on board, and, well, low income, all of that, you know, all that plays a big part of it.
People can't afford rent as it is right now.
Do you have more after this?
Yeah, I think there's 2 more slides.
Okay.
Go ahead, Stephen. So this is how much additional revenue we would realize depending upon the tax increase that you do. So if you did a 4.6, again, as I've been saying, you'll get $630,000 in additional revenue. If you go down as low as a 3%, you're looking at $354,000 in additional revenues. Go ahead, Stephen. And this was a question that came up last month, I believe, by Michelle. She wanted to know what these ESSER-funded positions are going to cost us in the 2024-2025 school year once all of our funding goes away. So the Director of Educational Technology is $232,000, and I did figure in there increase on medical going up over the next 2 years. And I also went back and looked at a slide that I showed last time, which was the PCERS projection rates over the next 5 years. I went out 2 years and said, what's our PCERS rate going to be at that point in time? So again, with all of our professional positions, if they would all stay in the budget, you're looking at $445,000 in additional positions. The paraprofessional positions on the bottom, we have 5 at the building levels. There, during that year, would cost us $136,000 in additional expenditures. And the ELDP paraprofessional I pulled out, and I pulled that out. We currently are paying that also from ESSERS. But if we do not continue with the ELDP paraprofessional position, we could have an issue where we might have to then have a teacher come in and hire a teacher at a much higher cost. Because our ELDP numbers are increasing, and we don't have the manpower to do it. So with the para, she's been able to alleviate some of the manpower and help with things. Dr. Stoker might be able to talk a little bit more to that, but that's why I pulled that one out, because if you chose not to do any of the paraprofessional positions, we're kind of thinking the LDP one is probably one that's gonna have to stay.
So we had two teachers in the past, 2 years ago, that essentially worked in that program, not full-time. Both had other teaching duties, whether it were a class or gifted, but they both did work in the ELDP program. When one of those teachers retired, we repurposed that position somewhere else because our numbers were stable at that point, and we didn't have a lot of students in the program. Our numbers going into that year then doubled. So we went from 15 students to approximately 30 students, and we needed to make a decision about how we were going to provide services to those students. So we did that through the paraprofessional that we hired through the ESSER money. We are still around 30 students. So sometimes, students move in, students move out. At this point, we are about 30 students, and we're expecting, with students exiting the program through their WIDA assessments, and absent of knowing if anyone's going to move or anything coming into the fall, we're expecting that we need that position at least for the fall. And then as students graduate or move on, then we'll continue to make decisions annually on that.
Okay, and that concludes the presentation tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
So we talked about adding a kindergarten teacher.
Yes.
Would that teacher have to move up each grade to accommodate that number of students? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, potentially, yes. We've done that in the past with other teachers, where they kind of follow the large, sometimes what we refer to as a bubble class.
Right.
They will follow that class.
Is there any point in those things where it would go down?
So we assess every single year our staffing needs, and the first thing we look at is through attrition. And if there's a possibility if somebody retires or to leave the district for another reason, then what we look at is we look at the staff we have available, with the credentials that they have, the certifications that they have, and then see if that lines up to address the need somewhere else. Or if we don't need to fill that position because we have enough staff on hand that are certificated in the right areas at the right building levels to fill what we have left.
Thank you.
Yep. We do that similar process with support staff as well.
Steve, can you go back 2 slides for me? 1 slide, I think. 1 slide. Okay, so currently we have to pass our preliminary budget on Monday evening, knowing that that budget can be adjusted and can only go down in June. I need to know what you guys want me to build in as a tax increase for that, because I need to build something in to do the budget for Monday night. So I need to know where you guys want to land on this, knowing that it can go down. So you could choose the highest if you want, knowing you're never going to settle on that, but I need to put something in order to give that number and what the millage rate will be.
I
Can we
say
take a
3.
5-minute break to stretch and gather our thoughts? Still allowed?
Yeah.
Default to the chair.
Oh,
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Okay.
I'm the only one that needs to
No, actually, I have to go. I have to go.
Oh, you
Michelle.
do?
Yeah, I have to
So do
go.
I.
Well, then.
No, so we're gonna,
I guess I'm looking at a potential of like 916,000 if we do that refi,
Right.
okay? I'm looking at our budget this year, and you're saying there's gonna be 472,000 about
Yep.
left over, which tells me that our revenues over expenditures are 472,000, so I'm gonna cut that back to 400. So now I got 9 and 4, I got like $1.3 million between those two to take away from the $2.4 million, okay?
Yep.
That leaves me, what, 1,000,001 short or something like that.
Yep.
And there's a possibility that the government's gonna give us close to 1 million, although I don't wanna count on that.
Yeah.
I don't wanna count on that. But
Exactly.
even if we count on half of that,
Mhm.
that still tells me that, you know, worst case scenario, we're only $500,000 short.
Which is what I
And we
said.
still have our
Yeah.
$12 million fund balance, which we could tap into. So,
Which scenario are you using for these numbers?
the
Scenario
scenario I'm using is 1A.
one? Oh, okay.
Okay.
1A and the one with the longest stretch out of debt, right?
Yeah, and then if I look at
the one with
the
the
new
longest
overall
The second
after,
page.
it's 202,
yeah.
comma 004 as opposed to 290. The second line down, column 7, column 13. That's why I came up with the 900,000, 916,000. If we don't do anything, we would have to pay 2,920,618, and if we do, it would be 2,004,195. Okay, that's a difference of like 916,000, right?
Right.
Are you with me?
I am.
Okay.
Yeah, how many years does it extend it, Matt?
What's that?
How many years does it extend it?
6.
I
Uh,
thought we had
Extends it
6.
almost 6 years,
Yeah,
correct?
6 years.
6 years.
Yep, sets it 6 years.
6 years, so you're adding, what?
Which
Six,
still puts us in good shape compared to the district for what they were saying.
but
and-
long,
and
but
then-
long
But
term,
long
you're
term
adding,
is what
you're
I-
adding
All I'm
6
saying
million.
is, if we're 1.3 million short, we have a possibility of $1 million, and we only take half of that, I'm okay with maybe budgeting half of that, because we're gonna get something, we don't know what, and taking stuff out of the fund balance, so that I'm not looking at a 4.6 or a 4 or even a 3.5. I would be comfortable looking at something less than that as a final budget, okay? For a preliminary budget coming Monday night, we're not ready to do that yet. So for a preliminary, I would now vote for a 4.6,
Mm-hmm.
but knowing full well that
That
when it
you're
comes
never
time
gonna
for
land.
final, there's no way I would vote for anything really that
Right,
high.
and that's always what we've done in the past.
Yeah,
We've
that's just-
always
that's just-
done the
That's
max.
just my opinion, stuff I'm throwing out.
As long as we make that comment when
And I
we
think,
do
yeah,
that vote.
I think the public has to know that the rationale, we've got to do it high so that we can
You
come
can-
to
you
a
can always
realistic
come down
figure
from
later.
it,
yeah. Come
Because
down.
if we come low,
Correct.
we can never
Come
add to it
back.
once we put it out.
So-
And I think the public needs to know that, because I don't think they're always understanding that.
Yep.
I'm fine with that, Matt. Sorry, guys, I need to go. Anybody else, anything else for finance?
Okay, so we're doing the 4.6
As a tentative.
as a
Tentative,
tentative,
and we're-
knowing that it's
Yeah.
never gonna land there. It's gonna land well below that, but we'll make that final decision in June.
Yeah, and
Right.
like I said,
So when
as
you-
long as we make that comment on Monday night.
Monday night. Yep.
Monday night. Terry
When
gets
you-
it in the
when you
paper.
look- When you look at it administratively, what you're looking at, you need to now then come into a realistic number.
Yep.
Okay.
The
I'd
other
like to try to
question I
get
have
closer
for
to that
group
3 number.
is, what message would you like me to take back to the representatives from PFM?
Tell them you were thinking about it. I can't make a decision tonight. I can't.
Is there a recommendation?
Based on the conversation that just happened, I would say
You're
go
right,
with
there's a
scenario
lot of
1A.
pieces have to
1A.
fall into place, yes, before you can make that, there's a lot of pieces have to fall into
Because we
place
need to let
before
them
you make
know.
that decision.
I still don't know how I feel about 1A, because I mean, you're adding almost, what, 6 million to the, in interest in the long term to get temporary relief this year? You're
Well,
kicking it.
not this year, but February.
Well,
Every
well,
year, yeah.
Okay, so you're kicking the can down the road.
We're
for-
kicking the can down the road, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, that's what
Yep.
we're doing.
Yeah, I will just flat out say I hate 1A. I hate 1 and 2, but I understand the variability of the rates in scenario 2. And I understand that can be scary, but,
I hate the,
I'm a hard
hate the thought of
and on.
yeah, I really don't like 4.6, but I don't like kicking the can down the road even more.
This is gonna cost everybody more.
You know?
We gotta think about it. I mean, I can't make a decision tonight. I can't. I don't know about you guys, but I can't. What do you
Yeah,
think, Bob?
it's a balancing act for me too, Chad. I'm looking at, you know, the situation we're in right now economically. People paying higher for food, higher for gas. To hit them with a 4.6, and then I guess what where I'm at, I'm balancing where do I feel about today versus what's it gonna be like 7 years from now? Will I even be sitting in this chair 7 years from now? You know what I'm saying? I don't wanna kick the can, I don't understand. Well, you're not gonna go 60, Matt? Come on. You hired me way back. That's how long you've been sitting in that chair. So, I don't know how I feel. I honestly don't. I don't like doing what you're saying, kicking it down the road a little bit, but, the situation we're in now, I don't know if we cannot afford to. I don't know.
Which
That's
is,
where I'm at.
which is what makes the smart thing to do the 4.6 for Monday night. Because
Right.
if you
Tentative-
choose
the
not
tentative.
to do anything with the funding, you've now increased Matt's number by another $1 million.
Yeah,
So it gives you that flexibility then to
Yeah, it
move
has to be
anywhere
that.
from a 4.6
I mean,
to
even
below.
if it's only at $16 a month, it's still $16
Right,
a month.
exactly.
And,
Yep, agreed.
I don't know.
Sorry, Matt, I can't give a
I
recommendation
don't
tonight.
apologize, just tell them to hold.
Mm-hmm.
I was just trying to throw out one scenario, Donna, for purposes of discussion. I'm not saying that's etched in stone or where that need to be, but I think these are some of the things we need to look at.
Oh, yeah, we need to look at it, absolutely.
Absolutely.
I can't do it tonight. That's what I'm saying.
But to make a quick rash definition.
Yeah, I don't do good with rash judgments. That's not one of that other secret chemical. Anyway, does anybody else have anything for finance?
I mean, I would like to know where each individual board member stands on an opinion on the bond options right now. If you have an opinion.
I don't know yet, Michelle.
If,
I don't, I'm sorry.
I mean, if I had to pick one of all of them that I like the most, I don't know. Good question.
Where are you, Michelle?
I do not like 1A. I don't love 1, but I also am not comfortable taking the risk on waiting for scenario 2, which is what I would prefer to wait after 2023 for the taxability issue. So if this is something that we would want to do, I would vote yes for 1, but I would vote no for 1A.
Okay.
2036 seems too long. Like, I just registered Carson for kindergarten, and he's the class of 2035. He's 5 years old, you know what I mean? It just seems like a very long time. But also, the other one's 2033, so really it's all,
Relative.
it's all.
It's not like we're broke.
Yeah, maybe, I mean, maybe even a combination of scenario 1 and taking a little more from the fund to help reduce the total amount.
You're talking about like this, like you're talking about the final.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, if we're gonna, my feelings are, if we're gonna restructure, then we're gonna go for it. I mean, I would vote for 1A. We're gonna get the most savings right now where we need it, and hope that better days are ahead.
You wanna say?
1A?
Are you at 1A?
Huh?
Are you at 1A?
I don't know what I'm
No,
at.
okay.
I don't know where I'm at. I have to think about it. Do you have a preference, Gary?
Not 1A. Not 1A.
How about if we, we'll let you know,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Thanks for the alternative. I appreciate you doing that and looking out of the box, because this was not even an option before. So the fact that you went and did that, that's great. I like the thinking, I like an option, but we just have to figure out financially what we're comfortable with.
How many Gertrude candy bar and chocolate bars can we
No, it's Thompson's Holdings, okay, so that's what we can sell.
Like 3 of those a day.
Either one.
I gotta
Need
go.
that concession stand at the baseball field.
Telling you.
I'm leaving, I'm calling it, sir.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go Bills.
Thanks for your comments.
Sure.
Anybody needs to take a quick 2-minute bio break? Now's a good time. Don't worry. Mr. Kern is going to open the meeting.
We have an agenda.
Hey, Bob. Second, tell me that the meeting started.
More like after.
You got it.
Plus, correct. Plus, she did the subsidy. She did the subsidy.
Okay. Education meeting, go very quickly here, so, I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Stoker, we can get started.
And I believe, Mr. Link, are you going to do the introduction?
Sure. So I'm happy to have with us this evening Dr. Mark Cabell from LCTI. Dr. Cabell is going to talk to us about the academic center, but also in particular the capstone program, which they are now offering. We've been getting a lot of requests from students and their parents, and some support from high school faculty here to allow our students to participate in either the all-day academic center or the capstone project. So we figured it's best to have an expert in both areas come over this evening and share some information about both programs, and then answer any questions that we may have. So that being said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Cabell.
Thank you. Mark Covell, everybody, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. I did provide some folders about LCTI. That's some current information for you about our programs in the Academic Center. The Northern Lehigh Board is well represented by Mr. Fedorcha on our JOC. I also provided some 50-year anniversary pins. This is our 50th year at LCTI, and we are thrilled to be offering some new programs as a result. This is a little bit longer slide presentation. I didn't know how long I would have. I promise I will truncate the ones that we don't need. I'm not being coy when I say that it's Lehigh Career and Technical Institute in PA. This was part of a presentation that we gave to a group for the Southern Regional Educational Board as part of their conference in Oklahoma. And so I just want to make clear who we were. This is something innovative that we're doing at LCTI that not a lot of places are doing. And so I just want to make that clear when I did this presentation. So that's why that's hanging out there. Next slide, please. So what I'm here to talk about mostly is our capstone program. That's what's drawing a lot of attention from Northern Lehigh students at LCTI. It connects to the Academic Center because basically it's a cohort model within the Academic Center. I just want to give a brief history on what we normally do for a cooperative learning student. Instead of their lab learning at LCTI, they would go on a job site. This would be a level 2, level 3, level 4 student in 11th or 12th grade, and that student would be eligible based on their teacher recommendation, based on a partnership in the community at an employer, to go to that employer to continue their training in on-the-job learning. But that's half of their day. So that student typically, if it's a senior, would have academics with you in the morning, and then they would go to their job placement in the afternoon. If it's a junior, most of our districts are sending juniors in the morning. So they would have to have a brief work experience in the morning, and then they would come back to Northern Lehigh for their academics in the afternoon. So this is the typical half day, or what I'm calling the old way, and I'm just using that as a reference in a comparison to the new way. Where this all comes from is, if we go to the next slide, what I call the COVID shuffle. So basically, when we had our shutdown in the spring of 2020, we stopped our work-based learning, and we all entered back into a hybrid situation. And as a result, our students weren't on site 3 days of the week. Everybody had online learning Wednesdays, and then depending on their cohort, they were on site for 2 days. And so what that meant was they had full days that we were not doing synchronous learning, and we had some of our teachers with very active apprenticeship cooperative learning programs say, hey, would it be possible for them to do their online work in the evenings, and then therefore work a full day, let them see a full work day for the students for which that's a good fit. And so we thought we would pilot that in the fall of my date is wrong there, the fall of 20 into 21. I apologize for the error on that. The fall of 20 into 21, this is last school year, and it worked out great. We can go to the next slide. This plumbing apprenticeship is important because those students need 2,000 hours to complete their plumbing apprenticeship. And so We had ready-to-go employee partners, but under the previous way, they were only getting about 360 hours annually because they were only able to do half days worth of their time. Because we switched to the full days, albeit for only a couple of days a week, they were able to earn over 700, so they were doubling their amount of time towards their apprenticeship. Again, not for every student. This is for the students for whom they want this experience and for whom it's a good fit for them. And so we did that as a pilot in the 2021 school year and realized that that could be extended to other programs outside of the plumbing situation, and also perhaps we could create a cohort model to make it more efficient for all students that attend the academic center. So what we built was something we're calling, next slide, the capstone experience. So basically the capstone experience is something that is now full day. So we took that hybrid model, we learned the lessons from doing hybrid, tried to maximize what worked, and tried to infuse some protections for the students for the things that we felt weren't a great fit for hybrid learning, meaning in-person check-ins with the teacher. So we built a model where the students would come on site 1 or 2 days a week or more, depending on their academic need, and then be on site with their employer. So we would keep the hybrid learning, but with more in-person check-ins, 1 or 2 days a week or more as needed, and then the students would be able to work a full day. And so we tried that out as a pilot. Well, we expanded it as a pilot, and it's been amazingly successful. And so what that means is that the students are completing their work on non-work days or in the afternoon hours, and they're able, and this is kind of a game changer, they're able to transport from home. Okay, so if they're working a full day, if their work site happens to be close to where they live, they're able to transport from their home rather than having to transport from northern Lehigh to, say, Decca Battery that might be a little farther away, or to another work site where we would have a student doing a cooperative learning experience. Also in your home, you might be able to platoon your vehicles if you have shared vehicles in the home. And we found that that was a big advantage because access to reliable transportation was oftentimes what prevented a student from being able to participate in a cooperative learning experience. We can go to the next slide. So the statistics from our pilot year, the 2021 year, was that we had 17 students in this cohort. That grew this year. These are end of year statistics, so the 21-22 statistics aren't in yet because truthfully, even in traditional co-op, we'll add students up through the end of the year, especially juniors, because they can transition that into their senior year. In fact, this is a big time for our juniors to be getting those cooperative learning experiences. 83 total co-op students, that includes juniors and seniors, and you can see all the programs where we attempted to do a full day co-op in our pilot year. That has expanded this year as well. So if we go to the next slide, ultimately the reason that this works is because it's a consortium approach. So I believe right now there's 2 to 3 confirmed Northern Lehigh students for sure that are interested in this program and have been very active in asking us if they can participate. That would be really difficult for your high school principal or Mr. Link to create programming for those students because it's just 2 or 3 students, and you'd have to take an English, a math, a social studies, and a health wellness teacher to give them the credits that they would need. But I can take 2 or 3 students from Northern Lehigh, 2 or 3 students from Northwestern Lehigh, 2 or 3 students from Parkland, 2 or 3 students from Southern, 2 or 3 from Allentown, from both of the schools in Allentown, and now I have a full class, and I can create a cohort where I can maximize that opportunity for those students. And that's the ask that's happening from your students now, is that they want to participate in this full day cooperative learning experience. Like I said, it's through the academic center because what I do is I create that cohort model, we decide what courses those students need, and then they travel within that cohort so that we're being efficient about our use of teachers in the academic center. So here it just says if we were to replicate the model in each district would have to find those 4 subject areas to make this work, plus monitoring the students, plus doing the cooperative learning supervision, unless we did that part through Southern or through LCTI. We can go to the next slide. What we did to make sure that the hybrid made sense was that we had the benefits of the flexible learning opportunities and the benefits of live in-person academics. So we made sure that the students had a teacher, a live teacher, their teacher, that they could check in with, and then we could monitor the students more closely. If the students were having grade difficulty, we could work with the employer, because it's through our co-op office, to pull them back and give them more academic time with a live teacher, so that we weren't having any students get lost. I think all of us felt a certain way about how hybrid learning went when we didn't have those lessons already learned. We've learned those lessons and tried to program for those students. And then if we go to the next slide, it just talks about how we'd like to keep this as a blueprint for the future. We built that virtual learning infrastructure, and so now our normal day for a student can be redefined. Those intensive work-based opportunities have been a driver for enrollment. We have students now asking for this by name because they are so interested in building that relationship with an employer, and realize that these employee-employer relationships can then turn to high-paying, high-skilled jobs for those students. And we are seeing more and more and more employers offering very lucrative packages for these students to get their continuing ed through the employer, to get all sorts of benefits through the employer. And so having that relationship early has only been beneficial. And then of course we have that tiered monitoring system that we've implemented. We learned that lesson when we tried this at first, and it wasn't a cohort model. We developed it into a cohort model, and now we have that tiered monitoring system so that we're keeping an eye on students that need additional help. The next slide is just some photos of our students on site in their full day experience, and I have all the time you need for questions if you have any, and that's my last slide.
Thank you, Mark.
I apologize for speaking fast. I know I'm between you and dinner, so I'm trying to.
So again, we are getting requests for this. You know, right now I would say top end 5, but it probably is more like 2 to 3 students that are actually approaching us. Some of us on a daily basis. You know, have you decided yet? Have you decided yet? We're also getting the emails from their parents requesting this as well. Go ahead.
I just want to add too that we are sending a survey out at the high school to ask, you know, how many of our students currently attend that would be interested in the program, or how many students don't attend but would be interested in a program if it were to be offered. So we'll have some more additional data on that beyond the students who've reached out to us.
And to that, I would just add, you know, through our work with the Workforce Development Board, they are 100% in alignment with everything that Dr. Koval just said about our local industry is looking for these type of opportunities to partner with students to get them directly into the workforce after high school, and then to continue upskilling them afterwards, and they will pay for it. And as many of the industries that Dr. Cavell had listed up there, just as an aside, this is the focal point of my doctoral research as well, and nationally, all the national data supports this as well. Having students get on a pathway that doesn't necessarily mean they have to go to a 2-year or 4-year school and leave with tens of thousands of dollars of debt. They can go right into industry, continue to get educated, and already start making, you know, high-paying jobs right out of high school. I'm recommending that the school board really consider opening this up maybe as like a pilot year to the capstone program. There is a cost associated with us. We pay a little over $7,000 for a student to go to the career technical education side, so the, you know, AM, PM type student. This is about an additional, hold on. This is about an additional $4,700 above that per student for the full day program. You know, right now, again, I suspect we'll have to see how the survey results come in. But remember, the kids have to have a job, so that's already gonna maybe set aside some kids. I'm not expecting high numbers on this. I would recommend that we try it at least for a year, and then we report back on the success or lack of for those students.
And the job would have to be in their trade area.
Yes, that's a requirement.
As a cooperative
Because there is another program such as DO, which
correct.
technically is not, does not have to be within the trade area, but it has to be within the trade area itself.
Correct.
So when this new part of the capstone, will still continue the half-day capstone.
Half-day co-op will remain, it will always be
The
there.
co-op will still be there.
Correct.
This is an additional then, that would take our student technically full-time to LCTI then.
Correct.
And that's where the extra cost comes in. Okay.
Now, I will tell you that when students have not found flexibility to be able to create their own work schedules, in full, full honesty, we did see students switching over to online or hybrid options that would give them that flexibility. They would find that flexibility, especially if this became a priority. And I think that's when the cost, I think we were talking a little bit before I got to hear some of your budget presentation, the cost can really skyrocket when that happens. So while there is a cost associated with it, it is a consortium cost. It is a 5-year rolling average cost, so those costs are we tried to keep that smoothed over so that there's not peaks and valleys.
So I've had some preliminary discussions as well with Dr. Rushton, the executive director of LCTI. He suggested we do this evening. If the committee supports it, then Mrs. Molitoris, myself, Dr. Cavell, Dr. Rushton would meet and figure out what that entry price point would be for Northern Lehigh students, because this would be the first time we are participating in such a program. And we have to see how that works with all the other sending districts, 5-year rolling average. So I guess I'm asking for permission to continue the conversation with LCTI.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is an awesome program.
I think, I'm sorry.
I don't think this is really specific to the capstone program in general. More or less LCTI and our school, so maybe this is the right time or not, for scholastic athletes that want to also do LCTI. Are we able to accommodate those that want to do both?
Yes, when we become aware of a conflict of time, right, 'cause it's usually a transportation time and access type issue, we move quickly to put interventions in place to make sure that they're getting the same opportunities as student athletes that do not attend LCTI.
Okay.
Every day we have transportation for activities from LCTI every day, like during the season.
The only problem we face, and we face that even with the normal co-op program, is that if the employer deems them to work till 5 o'clock, for example, there's no flexibility. I mean, and it's not a school choice, basically. So, I mean, and that's always been a major concern with students wanting to be part of sports. It's a decision they have to make.
And currently, for the spring sports, we have a high number of students who are attending LCTI participating in spring sports right now. I think it's the highest that we've had in quite some time.
But they're back here by 3 o'clock, and that's the difference.
A little bit after 3.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why I said, we've always had that kind of problem with our our co-op program, and it's a decision a student has to make.
Yeah. Hopefully the employer's a little flexible for the understanding.
Right. And they may be more flexible now that they would have them full-time, rather than just coming in at 12:30, 1 o'clock, and working till 3. That's another issue that was there, and anyway, yeah.
For this program, is it the Northern Lehigh Guidance Office or like a guidance counselor at LCTI that would follow the students' choosing of courses, making sure that they're on track to meet all the requirements that Northern Lehigh would require? Like, who is actually monitoring the path?
Excellent question. So that's amazing teamwork between the two sets of school counselors.
Okay.
Our school counselors know each of our 9 districts' requirements and monitor their students, and then are in near constant communication. This came up through a counselor-to-counselor dialogue initially, way back when. So I would say that they're both monitoring that. Ultimately, the student is awarded a diploma from Northern Lehigh.
Sure.
So your counselors are keeping the final tally, but our counselor's job is to make sure that they're communicating with your counselors. And I did just want to mention, all the academics in the Academic Center are college prep or higher. Math through calculus, science through physics, English through dual enrollment. We have all college preparatory programs.
And I would add, as our students that are juniors now, so the class of 2023 and beyond, as we start to look at those graduation pathways, this becomes very important for some students in order to graduate, depending on what pathway they're looking to pursue. So this is very helpful to some of our students.
So as we talk about pathways in this year's junior class, it kind of triggers a question for me. Thank you for the support so far for us continuing the conversation. However, I think that we're gonna need some sort of full board support to say that we would allow our students to participate in such a program. Is this committee comfortable for us coming up with some sort of agenda language to get on the Monday evening agenda to approve that?
Yeah, I think we have the support, I don't see any negatives.
Yeah.
My only question is, so we're only gonna be taking 2 or 3 students, what if we have 10? What's the criteria that will be used to say you're in, you're not?
That's a wonderful question and a problem I hope to have at some point. Right now, we have the space to accept those students, and so we would be able to accommodate the students that you send. Remember that they would need to have a relationship with an employer.
Right.
They would want to participate in a full day cooperative learning experience, and they would, so I mean, there are enough factors there that it, generally speaking, is not that high of a number for any of the consortium districts. It is that optimized number of really high-flying students with really high work drive that want that deep level of experience. That being said, if you had 10 students, I would be advocating to make sure that we could accommodate all those students, because I think this program is something that defines, it's a very good program that is something that you don't see in most places. And so we're trying to give, and also something that I failed to mention before is one of our goals as a strategic plan is to increase work-based learning opportunities for all students. And that's something that is a focus of ours. So I think the point behind me saying that is that institutionally we have a strong desire to accommodate those students as well.
Understand. Well, my son was one of the first ones in your academic center many moons ago. Obviously, the work experience part wasn't there because he went from there, went to a technical school right out of LCTI. You do a fabulous job in preparing him for that, and he's doing wonderfully well. But I could see my son, who isn't the one to sit in the chair and learn traditionally, would have excelled in this tenfold. And there's a lot of him running around in the building. And then once the word gets on, like what's happening, especially with future employment, I could see this kind of exploding with that type of learner. And I'm just thinking, if we're limited, then we're gonna have to take a look at a whole set of other criteria. I don't want to eliminate any kid from this program.
Me either.
This is where our tax dollars should be going, is what I'm trying to say.
It would definitely be a increase to our base taxes though.
Understand. I think for a good cause.
No question about it.
We're preparing
No
students for
question.
their life.
I agree.
Yeah.
So if this is something that the board ultimately decides to move forward with, depending on whenever that happens, if we're looking to pilot this for the 22-23 school year, one of the things that we would have to redo is our program of study for the high school to include this. Currently, we have all of the programs and partnerships that we have with LCTI and our other partners, but obviously this is not part of that guide that was already approved so that students could register for courses. So moving forward, sometime over the summer, we would add this to that program of study. We could pilot the program, and then moving into subsequent years, if we're finding that we need to have certain criteria, once we have that experience, we can build those into the program of study as well.
And the other piece that's important to mention is that no high school schedule is an infinite number of interchangeable parts. So our cohort is the courses that we have to offer, in those 4 areas of study. So if a student, say, would need a remedial English course and couldn't take English 12, let's say, that student would be, in the circumstance that you presented, that student might be the one who couldn't fit into the cohort based on what we have to offer. I don't have every single teacher teaching every single option. It's meant to be an optimized version to be the best for everybody. So that can be a difficult part of being a consortium as well.
When do juniors this year pick their senior schedule?
They've already started that. So we typically approve the program of study like February-ish, and then they start right around like March, going and meeting with their school counselors, picking their courses. So we're at the point where we have an idea of what the classes are going to be for the fall. So we'll be meeting to make determinations on what courses get built into the master schedule based upon enrollments right now.
Okay, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for your patience leading up to your presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank
You're
you.
doing incredibly hard work here, and I appreciate what you're doing as well. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Alright, next on our agenda, I believe it was last month, we discussed Peters Elementary School and, the accolades that they received with regard to school-wide positive behavior support. This month, we are now going to, address something similar with, Slatington. So I'm gonna hand it over to Mr. Briner to talk about, where we are with school-wide positive behavior support, in Slatington.
Thank you, Dr. Stoker, and good evening, everyone. I just wanted to give an update where we were with positive behavior support. We also were going through an evaluation tool, an independent evaluation this year, and I'm happy to report that on that evaluation tool done by Mr. Sillen-Perry from the IU, we scored a 95% on it. So we successfully mastered the benchmarks of equality in positive behavior support. So I just wanted to quickly just recognize our Schweb's team members, Suzanne Mangle, Sue Bile, Mike Mangle, Regina Ware, Amy Zeiser, and especially our entire staff who not only teach about school-wide positive behavior every single day, but they live the culture every day. So we are excited to kind of move into the next phase of evaluation, I guess. And we were at this phase prior to the pandemic. Some things happened over the pandemic year just because of changes that we had to do. And then once you kind of slip out of one tier, you go all the way back down to the beginning. So we're moving through the tiered fidelity inventory starting next year. So we'll be working with into tier 1 fidelity, the 2022-2023 year, and then in hopes that that goes well in the 2023-2024 year, we hope to move into tier 2 and working through that. Currently, we're working on our action plan based off of survey data and data we received from this evaluation on areas that we would need to improve upon. So just wanted to give the committee and the board a brief update. We did not have our evaluation in time for the last meeting. It was actually happening kind of in between the committee meeting and in between the board meeting because we had to actually postpone it for a staffing reason, but we're just excited to get that back and know that we're headed in the right path.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Briner, and congratulations to you and the team for all of your hard work. This is one of our current goals under the comprehensive plan that we currently are under. That was one of the goals that we had was school-wide positive behavior and intervention and support. So across all of our buildings, we're looking to continue to build fidelity within those tiers. So, you know, it's good to hear what our buildings are doing with regard to that.
Thank you.
All right. The next item we have is our curriculum update. I'm going to hand it over to Mr. Fine.
Sure. So for curriculum, in terms of progress right now, I mean, I've reported throughout the year the number of documents that we've been in progress, have had in progress, and that's at 315. I always like to be clear about that, though, that they're at very different levels of progress at times. You know, I mean, sometimes it's just the initial stages of the document. In others, we're very nearly done already. So this year, the curriculum cycle, and I presented that earlier in the year. I can put that back in the update again this week so you can see that 4-year cycle. Year 1, we prioritized math, ELA, world languages, and ELDP. And that was intentional because they fit well together. They fit well together just in terms of the content and in terms of possible long-term cross-curricular collaboration. So in subsequent years, year 2 right now, we have scheduled in, not right now, this is scheduled in, this is what's happening. SEL, Social Studies, Business, and Technology. Year 3, which is intentional because right now we're looking at a standard shift in science that is scheduled to be complete 3 years out. So we put science, health, PE, FCS, and careers. Again, there's real integration between those areas. And then year 4, art, music, and library. And then we start over again. And so I do ask that you remember that this is not about getting curriculum written alone. This is about establishing a process that will continue for years to allow us to continually evaluate and improve. Right now, math K through 6 is, I want to say, all but done. And when I say that, I mean that through an understanding by design process, which uses backwards design, essentially we started with what the objectives and standards were, what it was we were going to accomplish in each unit. We determined how we were going to evaluate ourselves, student progress, etc., developed and used those assessments. And then in this 3rd stage, we developed the instruction. We developed how we're going to get there, so the pathway through the map. When I say all but done, what I mean is particularly stage 1 through stage 2, really is what it is, the assessment piece, we have it outlined. The 3rd piece with instruction, that's going to be something I'm going to talk about, our LMS and things like that. That's something that's going to develop over time. That's not going to be all written out. It's not going to be written out every lesson plan and things like that right here from the beginning. So when I say we're all but complete with math, that's what I mean. We really do have a structure that we'll be able to use in order to evaluate where things are being taught, how we're determining whether or not they're learned, and then as we compare that to other assessment results, we'll be able to look back. I mean, are we doing it? Are we getting it done? And in math in particular, I think, to the credit of math teachers, they already, across the board pretty much, have common assessments. They're already using common unit assessments that we'll be able to put in. And so right from the get-go, we'll be able to start evaluating those because year 2 in the curriculum cycle is about assessment. We'll be able to start diving into those and taking a look at the assessments, taking a look at the results. Year 3 in the curriculum cycle, and this will continue every 4 years, is about, again, looking at those results and starting to examine weaknesses and strengths, and then we get back to year 4. And so we're opening it back up again, we're revising, we're rewriting, we're reshaping. ELA, K through 6, for the most part, also all but done. There are a couple of pockets where we ran into snags and we're working through things that I'm very, very confident we're going to be able to accomplish through money that we already have budgeted in order to accomplish some curriculum writing. And foreign language, thanks to the approval of the text series earlier this year from the school board and the fact that the text series is already designed with an understanding by design approach, is going to be very, very easy to write. So in short, I'm very confident that as we move through, and when I say by the end of this year we'll have drafts. We'll have the summer to review them. We'll open up next year by having Curriculum Council have the final look at them after they're all cleaned up and sort of give approval from there. So I'm very confident that we are going to accomplish that full first year. To boot, because the principals have been very generous with professional development time this year, I think that the subsequent subject areas in those former years are off to a really good start, which I think is why at this point we're ready to shift away from using so much professional development time in order to write curriculum and begin engaging our teachers and our professionals in doing that for contracted services rates, right? So doing that and paying them to get that done over the summer. This first year has been really beneficial, I think, district-wide, though, because we're all doing this the same way. We are all using backwards design. Everyone kind of went through this initial stage, and I hesitate to say struggle, together. And I think that that's really going to be beneficial as we continue to go through and we continue to write the curriculum. So the big lifts next year, besides, again, we're going to be doing the year 2 part of the cycle with ELA math, foreign language, and ELDP, which is a real close look at assessments and how we're actually measuring what we're expecting to have happen. The other big lift is, like I said, SEL is in there, and I know that SEL, essentially what we're talking about here are the life and essential skills that people need to have to be independent learners, to be collaborative workers with others, and things like that. So developing a curriculum K through 12 that gradually builds up those skills so that by the time you get to a student who's in high school, they're very capable of making those independent decisions, making plans for themselves in terms of their learning, that those skills are all in place and they've been built up over the course of the years. That's going to be a lift next year. And then of course we have the others to write. We have social studies, business, and technology. I will say, in technology and business, it does seem like there are a lot of things that have been developing, particularly at the middle school in terms of some of the courses that I think are going to make that come together very nicely. I think that I think we're about to be through the hardest year in terms of this process, which was getting everyone in the same place and moving in the same direction, and what are really the two behemoth subjects, ELA and math. And I'm optimistic. So that's in terms of curriculum. Any questions about that? Because I was just going to mention a little bit about the LMS and about Canvas and just kind of where we were in progress on that, because I know that that's all part of this picture as well.
Any questions?
I don't think I've ever heard you talk this fast.
Oh, you haven't heard me talking
so
off.
fast.
I'm sorry. we were just.
My God, like you were talking so
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah. We haven't talked enough. I'm sorry. And please, don't hesitate to tell.
He's really excited.
Don't hesitate to tell me to slow down. I actually don't even know if that was fast, to be honest. You'd have to ask some of the people I work with. That may not have been fast. So I do tend to get excited, and then it just keeps on going. So please don't hesitate to stop me. So for the LMS, I did include in the board report, we did hold our initial consultation meeting. Our second meeting is tomorrow. We have scheduled out 4 weeks of meetings. And we've already sort of honed in on what we want to spend most of that time on, which really is strategy of implementation. So we may be going back to them at later stages in terms of how to achieve particular parts of that, but I think we really want to take advantage of their experience with implementation at various school districts, share with them what our vision is, what our goal is, short-term and long-term, and make sure that as we're hitting those benchmarks, that we're continuing to move in the right direction, that we're continuing to sort of steer the ship in the right space. And I'm going to tell you, honestly, like a lot of our initial conversations and conversations around the district have been, we really want to move to a place, we were just talking about career pathways, right? We want to move to a place, and I think it's where some of those SEL skills come in, right? To where students take increasing control of their learning and their education, that we actually do what we say we want to do, which is create lifelong learners. And that's a difficult lift, in the 12 years that we have them sometimes, because they become reliant on us to constantly tell them what to be learning. And an LMS will really kind of allow us to leverage the power of that organization and that availability of information, of activities, of access points for knowledge, so that students can come in, and as we move them up through the grade levels, we can afford them more opportunities to achieve the same standards, achieve the same goals, but at points diverge. Go, and if this is what you want to learn about, and you can accomplish the standards in doing that. And that's been a lot of the conversations. And honestly, I've been really excited by how excited teachers have been to talk that way. Which in some ways doesn't surprise me, because we all came out of ed programs, some of us 20 years ago, and we got into the real world of education, and we were like, this doesn't work that way. I think technology is finally catching up so that things can work the way that we wanted them to when we were 22 years old, a while ago. So I do want to say it's all been tied to the discussions we've been having through the comprehensive plan about mission, vision, what it is that we're looking to accomplish as a school district, and that all comes together. So we're beginning, at the beginning of next year, we will, and I can say this with confidence now, I don't know if you had asked me a week ago if I felt like I had all the pieces in the right place, we will be able to have every teacher have a landing page on Canvas, K through 12, and we will be able to shift pretty immediately, at the beginning of the year, because it has to be, we have to get this done at the beginning of the year, in the areas of communication and in some other functional areas. They're really areas that would be optional for the teacher, but at some point it makes sense to make this where you log in instead of these 3 places where you log in every morning. And so I think that's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to use, you may have heard me talk in the past about the SAMR model. We're trying to use the SAMR model for technology and really take advantage of the substitution and the augmentation pieces, which are really, that's the stuff that makes old things we do just a little bit easier to do. In order to start getting people in there, parents, students, and teachers, and then over time, we're really going to use it to revolutionize the way that things happen in school. I'm convinced. So we are also using a universal design for learning set of standards as well as we approach and we go through this, which that speaks to the ability of all of our students having some access points and pathways where they can learn at or around the level of their peers, at or around the exact same set of standards as their peers. And the last piece is what we're starting with in addition to that is we are framing our asynchronous PD model and our delivery of professional development to begin to get better as a leadership team and as a school district at offering our teachers what we want to see the students have. So we want the students to have options, we want the students to have various learning pathways, we want them to have some control and direction over where they improve and how they improve, but we also know that there's got to be a set of standards to that. So right now we're looking at the Danielson model as a framework, and we're looking to build in a growing library of professional development and tap into where teachers are. What do you need right now? What can we get to make the improvements happen for you right now? Which I think that will have the double benefit of making our teachers better and meeting them where they are and with what they need, but also demonstrating that we value this and that it's something we want them to value too.
And you're gonna do it by obviously using it, so it's gonna be part of their life, which is exciting.
I tell people, like, I don't know, this is gonna sound dramatic. I don't know if I could stay if it went away, because right now I'm investing so much of what I see as the plan for us in terms of curriculum, instruction, all of these pieces coming together, that if this thing went away, I feel like I don't know how to reimagine it a third time.
Yeah, I think it's new to everybody around this table, and once parents get a chance to get in there and see what's going on, and the better utilization by teachers with all their content, it's gonna be, I've seen it, I witnessed it, I did it, so I know what I'm talking about. And I know it's gonna happen here too.
Yeah.
It definitely will. One of the things I didn't wanna lose sight of was the things that we discussed on improvement. And this, we know curriculum was number 1, and obviously having a learning management system is number 2. And then from there, things will begin to fall into place. So, I just want to say thank you. We do need processes, we do need checkpoints, we do need timelines, and I'm hearing all those things, which is good.
And I should be able to, when it comes to the LMS report, I think more, I want to say June, but let's say June, if not at worst August, just because we probably lose July, with something that I think will be less nebulous, will be a lot clearer to everyone in terms of, okay, here's what this will look like in January of 2023. Here's what this might look like in September of 2023.
It's going to improve our product, and when we look at budget and we see all those kids going to charter school, I want them to reconsider and say, you know what, Northern Lehigh's offering a great program here. Let's go there. And it helps us, our bottom line as well. But more importantly, we're helping students achieve and prepare for their futures, and that's why we're here. So, thank you. Anybody else?
I have a Canvas question, and this might fall into the category of things that are nebulous, but so if every teacher at the beginning of this upcoming school year has their own landing page, are we asking them to use that for communication yet? Like, is it going to be the expected best practice?
So and I think that's, we have to iron out the transition exactly, but if I had my way, that becomes the anticipated way that everyone is communicating with each other within this district network, at least asynchronously, right? Outside of a phone call, like outside of a meeting, like if there's no reason to write an email. once we're all on campus, right? I mean, because it's
Yeah.
all there, right? And I'm not saying that we're not getting rid of email, but I'm saying, I mean, it's gonna be a lot nicer when we all go in and we have this uniquely designed communication space that doesn't have 15 spam mails from vendors and, you know, like just a bunch of other stuff to clear through. It'll be our internal communication space between parents, teachers, between administration, teachers and parents and students and so on and so forth. So how that exactly works, but it's gotta be quick. I really do think it's gonna end up having to be fairly quick next year. We're gonna have to start pushing people into that space.
Yeah.
And so,
And even how principals can communicate with parents as
Mhm.
well, or school-wide, or just a grade, or a class, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
It
the
can work any
announcement
way you want it
function,
to
you
be,
can talk to
and
the
it's
whole class.
efficient and it's easy.
yeah, I mean, right now we're using, again, I think this is the way we started the conversation about, 6-7 months ago, is we're using a lot of programs that with the best intentions were pulled together during the pandemic to answer to a lot of different things. And again, like that's a lot of clicks, that's a lot of logins, that's a lot of things to have open. I don't know if anyone's tab crazy, but that's a lot of tabs, right? Canvas puts a lot in one tab. So yeah, so I think people will want to go in there.
Anything else? Good, okay, that closes our education meeting. And I guess we're going into policy?
Correct.
I have to make a phone call about my luggage that is still in Dublin.
All right, Mrs. Heckman, as the co-chair, would you like to open up that meeting?
Welcome to the meeting, Dr. Stoker.
I'll try to keep this one as quick as I can, because sometimes policy can get, lengthy. So we have 3 policies on the agenda this evening. Many are tied to the policies that we did last month, one of which is tobacco and vaping products. So this policy is mandated by law. It's actually Act 93 of 2019 and Act 111 of 2019 made modifications to the Pennsylvania Crimes Code regarding use and sale of tobacco and vaping products on school property. Both acts contain similar language resulting in modifications to 18 PACS Section 6305 and 6306.1. So as a result, PSBA has recommended that the definitions and provisions of the policy be updated to reflect those changes. So I'm going to take you through this policy as quickly as I can, but at the top of this, it was originally tobacco. It's now called tobacco and vaping products as part of that update. The green language is everything that you will see that has been changed. I don't know why it's stalling as I'm trying to move through it. The first section, as always, is the purpose. So that big chunk that's on the first page, I'll try to summarize it the best that I can, just to say that it's a more comprehensive definition of tobacco. So it applies to district employees, it applies to contracted personnel, and it's just really a more broad definition of tobacco, including Juul, including any of the vaping products. Moving on to the next page, again, that just continues. So all of these that are numbered is just really what they're considering to be a tobacco product now. Moving into the authority section, this is essentially saying what the board prohibits. So it prohibits all of these different kinds of tobacco in different forms, and it's at all locations on our property. So buses on our property, anything that we own, lease, and such. Moving further down in that section, it also talks about at any time while responsible for the supervision of students, and that includes being off property too. So if we were to have like a prom off-site, that would be included in here. The policy does not prohibit possession of tobacco and vaping products by employees or contracted personnel of legal age. So they can have it, they just can't use it. They also, in the next paragraph, cannot give it to students. So they cannot furnish it to anybody else. So that this policy is a little bit different, obviously, than what we see for the students, but similar concepts. At the bottom, the superintendent or designee shall notify employees and contracted personnel of this policy, so that's something that they have to be put on notice. And then the last page, we do everything into our Office of Safe Schools report. Many things get reported there at the end of the year. And this would be, any violations to this policy would also be reported. It can be also referred out to law enforcement, including our school police officers, local police department, if Pennsylvania State Police happen to respond to a building. If we had incidents, they could also, it's under their jurisdiction. So that is the quick version of that policy. Any questions on that? Do we have the ability to move that to Monday night for a first reading from the board members that are present?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, next policy is 810.1. This is drug and alcohol testing of covered drivers. This policy is required as a board policy. Act 131 of 2020 revised the vehicle code with provisions for 75 PA CSA, Section 1606 on requirements for commercial driver's licenses, and 75 PA CSA, Section 1604 on notification requirements for drivers. I'm not going to repeat that. That's the same for the next two policies that we're doing. Policy 810.1 talks about covered drivers. 810.3 talks about school vehicle drivers. So it takes those two and puts them into two different categories. So the first one, 810.1, that we're going to talk about, again, this is a pretty long policy. I'm really going to try to make it an abridged version as much as I can. This one covers our bus drivers through Brandywine, and it also covers any of our vehicles that are commercial vehicles. We do not have any commercial vehicles. All of the sizes of our vehicles fall under the requirements or the tonnage for what's considered a commercial vehicle. So like our box truck and some of our other vehicles that some of our maintenance and custodians drive around, they do not count for this. So they don't have to have a CDL license to drive those vehicles around. So really, this policy does not apply to any of those people that are driving those vehicles on our campus. So again, moving through, the purpose is to essentially, the board recognizes that an employee must be fit to operate a school bus or a commercial motor vehicle to ensure the health and safety of students being transported. So again, we don't want anyone to be using drugs or alcohol and transporting any of our students around. Moving into the second page, it's mainly several definitions, including what a commercial motor vehicle is, what a covered driver is, driving, electronic devices, mobile telephones, safety. Those are all of those definitions that you'll see. Into the next section, authority. I'm struggling to move here. We struck through this entire section as it changed significantly since the last time that the policy was reviewed. So this talks about, again, we don't have the commercial drivers or commercial vehicles on campus, but it talks about drug use or alcohol misuse, prevention. It talks about observing all state and federal laws, that people who are driving should not be texting. Guidelines are in here, delegation of responsibility. The superintendent or designee shall develop administrative regulations with respect to this policy, and then it goes into detail as to what that needs to include. The next section is on notice, giving those administrative regulations, making notice of those, going into the guidelines. It also talks about employment requirements, so all covered drivers have to have background checks, certifications, employment history reviews. The next section talks about any additional documentation they need. You'll see language that was added for to obtain a copy of valid commercial driver's license indicating the appropriate endorsements from the covered driver, or authorize the applicable legal exemption in cases of emergency. Again, that part doesn't apply because we don't have anyone that fits that category with our vehicles on campus. Next section talks about people who take medicine. that may cause drowsiness and how that's handled. Anyone who's a covered driver who's arrested, charged, or issued a citation. It talks about reporting and what timelines there are for reporting that to either, again, Brandywine or to us. So it would need to be reported to both entities if somebody was arrested for a violation of the policy or convicted of something in the policy. It talks about controlled substances. It addresses medical marijuana. If there's an accident that happens and somebody's under the influence, how that's handled. At the end of the policy, it talks about the maintenance of records. So what records we have to keep as far as any of the drivers that we have in this category. Training. And then it references at the end the Department of Transportation's drug and alcohol testing regulations. Okay, so again, a policy we are required to have through PSBA, but one that does not really apply to our drivers, but does apply to, you know, school bus drivers, some of the regulations that they need to follow. Any questions on that? Do we have the ability to move that one forward for a first reading on Monday night? Or the board members present? Okay. Again, this last one, 810.3, similar. I'm not going to read through that other statement again. This policy is recommended for legal liability purposes. Again, the changes are being made because of that statement and how those laws have changed significantly. Not a lot as far as changes within this policy. I'll get down to them. A school vehicle driver arrested, charged with, or issued a citation. So it talks about if somebody's arrested or receives a citation or charged, when they receive that, how they need to report that to the employer. And the timeline, if they are convicted, that they also need to report that to their employer. At the bottom, this is just a change of pronouns, so things that used to say his and her now say their. And the last part is discipline. That discipline is to be determined. It can go up to and including termination of that employee, and that any school vehicle driver who violates applicable law and regulations, that needs to be handled accordingly. Any questions on that? Okay. Do we have the ability to move that to the board on Monday night for a first reading? Yeah. Okay. That is all I believe we have on there. If you would like to close the meeting.
Does anyone have any questions or comments on policy? I have a question, but it's not on policy. What day is high school graduation again? I don't want to forget to ask.
June 3rd.
June 3rd.
Friday, June 3rd.
Gosh, okay, thank you.
For K through 11th grade, it's June 8th.
Okay, because I think the calendar says June 15th.
So if you look at the calendar, bottom right corner, it adjusts for unused snow days and
Okay,
things
so
like that.
I didn't know what.
Yeah, so, but we can get that out. We'll get that posted out as a
Yeah.
pop-up on our website, because you're right, some people don't drill down to the actual.
Right, and we don't really know what was considered snow days, what wasn't.
Yeah, there were no snow days.
Yeah, figured there wasn't.
Yeah, so, but good question, thank you. Yeah, if you could just leave that, or if you want to leave that.
Yep,
Since you have it.
absolutely.
Mr. Chrisman, would you like to officially open the Community Relations Committee?
We will open the community relations.
Thank you, sir. All right, up first, I'm just gonna share some updated numbers as of the end of last week. STEAM camp for elementary and middle school are currently at 79 enrollments. That may have changed since the end of last week, but we're at 79. Open Horizons Summer Learning Academy, 47 students. That is the elementary program to address learning loss. And then at the middle school, we're at 3 students at the middle school to participate in the Inspire program. We're anticipating that number to rise a little bit, but right now we have 3 that are actually registered. And our Summer Shine Camp, we are still at 34 students. That is for the elementary program in partnership with L-Tri-C. Any questions on any of those? Okay, I'll continue to update those numbers again next month. Up next, I kind of mentioned this already, we are currently at 125 students. 128 students.
One was added today.
Okay, so we're currently at 128 students, somewhere within the kindergarten registration process, which now probably puts us firmly at 21 students per class if we stay at 6 teachers. Okay.
Which is the lowest in the area, if they're not.
21
We have a
5-year-olds.
low student to teacher ratio, this school does,
Yes,
a very low one compared to other school districts,
yes.
just so you're all aware of that.
21 5-year-olds with 1 teacher that have never attended a structured program before.
Yeah, other schools are doing it.
So, just gonna put that out there. The next part here, post-college career military readiness fair report. All indicators was that this was a huge success for our students, for our faculty, and for the vendors that participated in it. We are absolutely planning to do it again next year. We're looking to kind of maybe tweak some of the operations end of that as well. Any questions on the college career military readiness fair?
Nope. I just wanted to say I talked to Mr. Schroll personally, but I wanted to say publicly he did a fantastic job getting that together.
He absolutely did.
And everyone who helped him.
Yes, and that would be the first words out of his mouth, because whenever we tell him he did a great job as well, he said he had a lot of help, which he did. He absolutely led that effort though. Okay, next I invited Mr. Carroll to come speak about the DCI visit. DCI is Drum Corps International. Some of you may remember that we hosted them several times prior to the pandemic. And by them I mean one of their participants, Santa Clara Vanguard. We host here on campus for them to do their rehearsals. That comes with a certain partnership between us and them. We give them some, and then they give us some stuff back, which we then try to hand over to our community and to our students.
What could you, do you want me to give an overview?
Just
or?
an overview.
So historically, in the 25 years I've been here, we have hosted, and even prior to me coming to Northern Lehigh, hosted drum corps, as many as 3 at a time, for the Drum Corps Eastern Championship, the first weekend in August, their competition. Through my connections, we were able to get Santa Clara Vanguard back here in 2018 and 2019. They were not able to be here because of COVID in 20 and 21. 8-time world champions, just an absolute excellent guest while they're here. One of the benefits that we looked at, and Matt and I, Mr. Link and I discussed, was a give back to the community, where the community is able to come in and witness them rehearsing and practicing for free, and that's certainly something that we maintain. They also have an opportunity at times to interact directly with our students, as it corresponds with our 2-week band camp, the first 2 weeks in August. And Drum Corps International provides, again, 40 free tickets for our students and their families to go see them perform and compete in Allentown on the Friday and Saturday night. Part of the operations is they actually live and stay here for 2 days. They would actually be here this year for the entirety of Thursday, August 4th, August 5th, and then they would leave on Saturday, August 6th to go compete and then move on to where they're going to be. They would arrive sometime very late in the evening on Wednesday the 3rd, or very, very early in the AM of Thursday the 4th. Are there any questions? I don't want to, I could go on and talk for hours, and I don't want to do that. Are there any specific questions? There was, I had shared all the information with Mr. Link and Mr. Durr, and they've been here before. They would be staying in the high school gymnasium and in several of the classrooms. Specifically, the drivers, we typically, throughout the years, have put in the nurses' suite. The staff, the instructional staff, wind up in the library. They asked for 2 additional classrooms. The core members themselves, again, sleep in the high school gym. When they had to stay here the last time in 2019 because of renovations, this gym is actually too small and there was spillover. They also use the stadium and get ice from the facilities down there. They chose this last time, and it worked really well for them to put their brand new state-of-the-art meal truck down by the stadium to accommodate their students, not having to come all the way back to the high school to get refreshment when they're practicing on the stadium and it's 90 degrees. There was one issue that came up that I was asked to look into by Mr. Durr, and that was an issue of their gray water facility. And I had not recalled any specific problem, and Mr. Durr did not relay the details. I reached out to Drum Corps International and to Santa Clara Vanguard, and I wound up getting information very recently from Mrs. Meadows, their tour coordinator, and with their brand new state-of-the-art truck that they had brought here in 2019, they had a hosing issue where their hosing broke down. They brought someone in to repair it, and they do not anticipate a problem. And it was not indicated to me that Northern Lehigh had any concerns that I needed to address.
Sure, so I can shed some light on that because I actually responded to it with Mr. Durr. Their gray water discharge, there were some issues with that. And because of the location of the massive food truck, when I say food truck, I mean like an 18-wheeler with a kitchen, the discharge, we were trying to get it into one of the acceptable discharge drains on our property. It's not septic water or anything like that, it's sink water. And because of the location of the truck, the first place we tried to discharge it was the discharge right at the bus terminal. It was not able to hook into there, so there we actually had it discharging into the parking lot, which meant it had to travel across the parking lot, the water, the discharge water, and then get into the drain on the other side of the parking lot. That left about a 2 or 3 week gray water stain on the property. It was an eyesore, it didn't look nice. So we're asking them to position their vehicle down closer to one of the drains so we can discharge it directly into the drain, not just have it let gravity do its work across the surface of the parking lot into the drain. That was the issue.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was not aware of that.
Well, and honestly, because Greg, myself, their facilities person that travels with them, we figured out a workaround, which was basically just put the hose here and let it drain. And then we tried to just kind of clean it up afterwards.
Okay.
I'm confident that they will resolve that issue this time around. The reason why we're bringing it here, so we can get this committee support to take it to the board, because it would have to grant a variance in our 4-day work week, because they would be on site here on a Friday, which is a day that we are shut down for business and operations. We've been asking the board to grant that variance because of the give back that they give to the free. We're getting a world-class performance for free in our stadium to all of our community members, and then they give us free tickets so our kids can actually go see the competition down at J. Bernie Crumb.
They truly are one of the best in the world. It would be analogous to me being the football coach and bringing in, you pick your favorite NFL team, let's say the Minnesota Vikings, to come in and.
I was waiting for that. I was gonna say the Jets.
To practice for an exhibition, you know, at J. Bernie Crumb.
We're the only 2 Viking fans in Northern Lehigh.
Right. The only other financial consideration is Drum Corps International takes on some of the financial or the financial responsibility for them being here. The last bill, we billed them for cost of $1,720. We gave back against the value of the tickets and the ability to come in of about $1,220. So the Drum Corps International paid us $500 the last time we were billed. My memory serves me; those numbers should be right on.
Yeah, and the stadium was, I'm not gonna say full, but there was a lot of community members that came to watch them practice throughout the day in the stadium. So I guess we're asking the support of this committee to take it to the board.
Yes, definitely.
Thank you.
I would just like to say I think our high school team could beat the Vikings.
Touché. Okay. Mr. Chrisman, that's all we have for this agenda this evening.
Yeah, so any questions, comments? All right,
Okay.
that's a wrap. Everyone go home.
Thank you.
Mr. Carroll. Two different curriculums, I mean,